Great to have you.
Thanks for taking the time. I want to talk about a thing that I used to think was touchy-feely. And then actually you were one of the first guys that made me realize you could have all the tools, all the tactics, all the metrics. But if you don't have your mind right, none of it'll work.
Right.
And one of the things that I love about you is you've beaten into my mind that peak performance starts with mindset.
Yes.
And that is not actually a touchy-feely thing. But you've also hinted that in some ways, there's something that comes before mindset. And why is the order of that so important?
This actually came because this is going to be my 49th year. I've traveled the earth at a really unique time. I've been in every single major country in the world. I have clients in every country of the world. So 193 countries, give you an idea. Wow. And so after a while, you recognize patterns. And one of the patterns that I began to recognize is what creates a breakthrough. Because I'm interested not in just managing something or making it better. I want to scale something. I want to see it grow. Mm-hmm. Or a breakthrough in your personal life. Same thing. Somebody's going along and they try to change, don't follow through, try to change, don't follow through, beat themselves up. Like, what is the difference between the person who beat themselves up and the time when he or she finally broke through? And what I found is there's actually 3 elements to it. And the reason most people fail to have a breakthrough, I experience, is that they go after them in the wrong sequence. It's kind of like if you know the right numbers to a vault and you put them in the wrong order, you don't get the treasure, right? Yep. Same thing with your phone number. You don't reach the person. So I'll give you the 3 S's to a breakthrough. The first one is not the most valuable one. It's the first one people go for. It's strategy. Now, for you and I, strategy seems like the most natural thing to go for. If I want to achieve something, how do I do it? That's the number one question, right? But the problem with asking, how do I do it, is if you've never done it before, most people then go into what I call the tyranny of how. The tyranny of how is like, have you ever done this? Set a goal, maybe when you're really young. I'm going to do this. You maybe even told people you're going to do this, and this voice in your head goes, who are you kidding, right? Yeah. Because what happens is you start to doubt because you have no reference base. You have no experience. Mm-hmm. And so when you're uncertain, you don't follow through. You look at a peak performer, what makes them a peak performer, if you watch them going down that court in the NBA or NFL or whatever sport it may be, you feel this relentless energy. There's not an ounce of hesitancy. There's absolute certainty. That doesn't guarantee success, but it increases the probability through the roof. When you focus on something you know how to do, the doubts show up. And then the second thing that happens is, I'll give you an example. Let's take a simplistic piece. 70% of Americans are overweight, right? Mm-hmm. We're the fattest country in the history of the world. We're infecting every other country with our dietary patterns, and people around the world are getting more and more ill. But is the secret to being fit and healthy like so complex that you only need super intelligent people can understand? Is it that it costs so much to learn that technology? Is it special only for the 0.1% of the population? No, the strategy of how to be fit and healthy, there's a million different strategies. There's not even just one. Mm-hmm. And they'll all work to a certain extent. Some are better than others, obviously. So it's not a strategy problem. Now, it's possible. I remember it's about 15 years ago, Time Magazine had the cover of the magazine. It was the Atkins diet. And they said 14% of Americans are on the Atkins diet. Well, if you're on the Atkins diet, hopefully you woke up at some point and went, if anything makes my breath smell this bad and I got to pee on a stick so I got so much acid in my body, probably is not sustainable. But everybody did it. It worked for a short time. They went and did the piece to make it work. So some people did have the wrong strategy, but the real problem is the second S. I'm moving backwards in order of importance, meaning strategy is the least important, even though I consider myself a strategist. I know the right strategy could save you 10 years in your business. The right strategy could save you months in terms of turning your weight around or transforming a relationship. It could be minutes, right, if you have the right strategy. But people don't use the strategy because the second S gets in the way, which is their story. Mm-hmm. The story, we all tell ourselves stories about things. Our narrative of our life controls our life more than anything else. And all the story is a set of beliefs. Mm-hmm. And beliefs are nothing but things we've told ourselves over and over again with so much certainty that now we believe them. Like, for example, for yourself, if I can ask, can you think of any belief you may have had 10, 15 years ago that back then you would have fought for that belief, but today you're almost embarrassed you had that belief?
Yes.
Right? Most people can. So the fact that you believe it doesn't mean it's true. It just means you're certain. And so most people have certainty about what won't work. Mm-hmm. So let's take the example of fitness again. So you ask that person who's 35 pounds overweight, how come you're overweight? Well, I've tried, what will they say? I've tried
everything.
That's right, everything. And I look at them and I say, with all due respect, you haven't tried everything. Yes, I have. I've tried thousands of things. Okay, name them. And then they'll go, well, I've tried, hundreds of things. Name them. Well, I've tried these 2 things that don't work over and over again is what it'll come down to, right? And they call that everything, right? So the story keeps them to do it. You're not in a relationship. You don't have a relationship. You say you want one. Why aren't you in one? Well, the good ones are all taken, they're gone, or they're gay and I'm not, or I'm gay and they're not, right? It's not true. It's just not true. But the story controls what you're willing to do or not do, because it's a belief, and beliefs control actions, right? So even if you have the right strategy, if your story doesn't support it, have you ever been with somebody and you were, let's say, trying to help them, and you've got lots of skill, and so you're showing, hey, here's what you can do to take on small businesses and build a real mini empire for yourself, right? And you can do it with businesses people aren't competing you for, and you can earn great cash flow, and it's not sexy, but it's very successful. Well, let me show you how. And you can put all that in front of them, and they're just like, no, it's like, no, no, that's not going to happen. It just won't work for me. You say, no, look, I can show you. I've done it. No, it doesn't work for me. And the more you push on them, then they get more irritated. And the reason they're irritated is they want to hang on to their story, because the deepest fear everybody has, everyone has. Kings I've dealt with, and queens, Academy Award winners, Grammy winners, winners of the NFL, the greatest players in history. Everybody has a fear at some point that they're not enough. Yeah. Not rich enough, not smart enough, not funny enough, not attractive enough, not playful enough, not something enough. And the deeper fear we have is that we're not enough, we won't be loved. And love is really, it's like the heartbeat of the soul, right? It's the essence, it's the oxygen of your soul. So people come up with a story so they can explain, it's not that I'm not enough, it's just I have ADHD. Well, so did, Sir Richard Branson, he's done quite well, right? Don't confuse me with the facts. So the story, no matter how good and clear the strategy, and you do a fantastic job, I want to say on the air, I went through your book and I just thought you've made it so clear for people, and I would be doing this myself if I wasn't already as advanced as I've done in terms of size of businesses. If I was looking to start, it's a great way to do it. And in fact, I remembered it now. When I was really like 18, I went to a guy's course called Bizarre Financing, and it was all about how to build these small businesses, right? But I think you've done a more thorough job. But the point is, they're not going to do it if they don't have the right belief structure, right? So you have to divorce your limitations and marry the truth of your unlimited ability. Now, some people get a divorce and then they go visit their divorcee on a regular basis. It's not a good idea. You have to just cut it off and no longer go there. You have to tap into the truth. As corny as it sounds, the truth will set you free. But for most people, they don't have someone to really do that to them. That's what I do. I create environments where that happens. But there is something before that, and that is the first S, the one you should start with, but most people rarely even get to, and that is your state. If you're going to have a breakthrough, it comes from your state. You can think of that as energy, vitality, strength, mental energy, mental fitness, right? All that really means is your mental, emotional state affects the way you perceive everything in life. Have you ever been pissed off at somebody and then you suddenly can remember everything that they ever did that pissed you off?
Of course not, never.
Right? So, and when you're in love, what's wrong with life if you fall totally in love?
Not a damn thing.
Nothing's wrong with it. It's where broken doesn't matter, we're in love, right? So your state controls your story. Your story and your state control whether you do anything. If no one showed you how to get the strategy, you'd figure out the strategy. You'd find the way, you'd make the way with the right state. So all the work I've done most of my life, I realized was start with a state, because everywhere else you're starting, you could teach them the best tools in the world. They won't follow through. If I start with a story, it's easy to shift their belief, and then I can teach them the tools. But if you don't do it in that order, people get very, very frustrated. If you do it in that order, it becomes very, very easy. Like, for example, think about this. Somebody says to you, okay, I know, I got to go on a diet. I got to exercise. I'm going to do it. I'm really going to do it. Is it going to happen?
No.
It's not going to happen in a million years because the state they're in. Most people are trying to get themselves to do something. And what they don't understand is what you do is based on your state. And what do you think is harder, for example, dieting or fasting?
Dieting.
Yes, very much so.
Absolutism. Because fasting is absolute. You just don't do it.
That's
Dieting
right.
is like a rule by attrition.
It's like, have this? No, I'm having water. That's nothing, right?
Yeah.
So if you get to that place, that mindset, which is total resolve, that's what it takes to fast. In a state of resolve, it's easy. When you're dieting, you're saying, well, could I do that? What if I could do that? You're negotiating. Negotiation with yourself makes you weak. So the right state, you'll get the right behavior, you'll get the right story, and you'll find the right strategies. And so my focus is first there. Now I still do all three, but that's where I go first.
That's so good. It was funny because I was talking to some of our mutual friends, and one of them was like, you should ask him something that you need to change, like get a little vulnerable.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, God, he's seen all the things. I remember watching I Am Not Your Guru back in the day. And you're just like, a woman's life. I don't know what sort of crazy Tony Robbins magic, but you just like magicked her. And And I thought about it. I'm a pretty disciplined individual in a lot of ways. But for instance, like small things, this time of year, like I will say, no, I'm definitely not having multiple glasses of red wine and that bread. And then I will do it. But in your mind, the formula, does it just go absolutes? So like, is my next step just, okay, Cody, no red wine ever, no bread, or I have to say it when I'm jumping on a trampoline, or I have to say it when I'm excited. Like, how do I tactically change that?
You need stronger reasons, honey. You don't have strong enough reasons to follow through. So you have reasons in the moment. It's like decision making. Why are most people supposed to make a decision and then they don't follow through? That used to fascinate me too. And what I began to realize is a couple things. Number one, most people don't make a lot of decisions. So they have kind of weak decision-making muscles. I don't know if you've ever been around somebody at dinner at a restaurant and there's a person who's always the last one and they still can't decide. And the waiter or waitress is about to lose it and then they finally decide, right?
Yes, I never hire them. That's actually
No, you never hire them in a million years. However, the reason they're not making a decision is they want to make the right decision always. They want to do the right thing. But perfection doesn't exist. It's just not there. So if you look at decision making, I remember I met General Norman Schwarzkopf, who did the original Desert Storm group, and I remember asking him. We were talking about leadership and what's the most important thing in leadership, and he said decision making. And I said, well, how do you make tough decisions? He goes, that's what you're paid for. Any idiot can make the easy decision. What makes you a leader is big decisions.
Yeah.
He said, but to get those big decisions done, you have to have strong enough reasons to follow through, or it won't happen. And he says, if you don't come up with the reasons, the decision doesn't last. And he told me a story I'll never forget. He said that he was a private working for a general. And the general was one of the most powerful. I think he was a 4-star general, a 3-star general at the Pentagon. And very influential man, to say the least. And Pentagon had wrestled with a strategic decision for the Pentagon as a whole for almost 10 years. And they had people that argued on both sides pretty powerfully, so much so that no one could decide. And so they set a date where they're going to finally make a decision no matter what, and the general's going to make it. And so Schwarzkopf was the private, and he had 5 other guys. Their job was to accumulate all this information from both sides, which he said literally filled almost half a room, and try to bring that down to like 6 binders. The general could go through and really understand both sides of the issue. Well, as they're doing the collation, trying to go through this, which they were completely behind, he said he was getting so scared. And then the general was called out with an emergency, and he had to leave and didn't come back until literally the night before the decision-making process. And so he has no preparatory materials. And he said, I didn't know what the hell to do. I gave the general stuff, but I knew he couldn't possibly do it. He couldn't resolve these. Should I cancel the meeting? He said, no, bring the meeting. He had the meeting. He said, okay, give me side number 1. He said, you have 20 minutes. Give me side number 2. You have 20 minutes. And when they're done, they stood up and he said, do that one. And they all went, yes, General. And they saluted and left the room. But the story's interesting part was Schwarzkopf, as a private, is thinking, he couldn't possibly know what was the right decision to make that decision. This is insane. And he was so stressed about it that he worked up all his courage, knocked on the general's door, and said, permission to speak freely, sir. He goes, at ease. He goes, General, I know you couldn't possibly have viewed the materials. We couldn't even get you all the materials that are there. You just made a decision that determines the direction of the Pentagon. No one can make that decision for 10 years. You just did it. He goes, that's right. When put in command, take charge. He said, make a decision. He goes, but General, you didn't have enough information. He goes, there was too much information. He said, both sides have been arguing for 10 years. Here's what I know. Whatever decision I made, it'll be right, it'll be wrong. If it's wrong, we'll find out quicker. It won't take us 10 years and we can change our approach. If it's right, we'll be on the right track and we'll move forward immediately. Wow. Decisions need to be made. And I thought, what a great approach, right? So later I started studying and I was like, I think decisions have 3 parts. So when you go do yours, you decide not to drink or decide to drink only so many of these elements or drinks, right? A decision can feel a little bit like a war. I'm going to do this. I get myself to do this, all right, I'm going to do it, right? But it's a 3-part process, and that's what people don't understand. If you decide that's all you do, you're making a decision in the moment. You meant it when you made that decision to yourself. Wouldn't you say?
Sure.
Yeah. So what happened? Later on, you're in a different environment, right? You've not taken the moment and pushed it into the future. What takes that moment, pushed it into the future is if while you're in that moment, you did something that commits you to follow through, where there are consequences if you didn't, significant consequences, right? And that's what the general does, right? So you look at this and go, okay, I say I'm going to do this, but do I got enough reasons? Is this really that important to me? Because if it's not, I want to bullshit myself. I'm not here to lie to myself. If I'm really going to do it, then here's my absolute commitment for the next 30 days. And this is what it costs me if it doesn't, right? And this is what I get. This is why I want to do it. So it's not just a moving away from approach. But I always tell people, never leave the site of making a decision without doing something that commits you to follow through later on. Because you're going to be in a different state again, right? And you're going to make a different decision in that different state at that party that's there. But there's a third step that most people never get to. It's resolve. So think about, what does it mean to you to decide? Tell me what it means to you to decide. What's that feeling when you decide?
It's forward momentum.
Okay.
It's a choice
what does it mean
on
to
path.
commit?
To not go back. It's there's an anti instead of a
That's right.
A pro.
Now you put a line in the sand that's beyond just this moment. And you've taken what's in the moment, taken it forward. What does it mean to you to resolve?
Like, no matter what we're going to do, we're going to execute on this.
That's right. Resolve means it's already done. You say something is resolved, it's already done. It's done in you, so it's going to be done in the world. And what resolve brings an interesting emotion. Decision-making can be a little battle. Commitment can feel like having to use some force. But resolve brings peace. And then it's like, even if things don't go the way I want, even if it changes here or there, I've resolved this is how it is. So I want you to think of a decision you've made that you did keep your word on. That was a difficult decision. Because the alcohol one's not that difficult, right? I bet you've had some much more difficult decisions you've kept.
Definitely.
Can you tell me one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm divorced and remarried. So I remember when I was going through my divorce, or when I was going through my not so happy marriage the first time, I couldn't make a decision on doing it. And so I said, I'm going to put a date on a calendar. And by that date, I will have done the actions I think will, go to therapy, have lots of conversations, attempt to resolve it.
Yeah.
But if I can't, that will be my date. And by then I will tell him and we will commit.
So listen to what your language is even. You decided, and in that day you decided, you also committed. You committed to what had to happen in the future by a certain date, by a certain time, and what was going to occur.
Yeah.
Did you get to resolve?
I did.
When did resolve happen? Did it happen that day or later?
No, it happened that day.
So did you feel, what did you feel inside when you resolved it?
Peace.
Peace.
Sadness, but peace.
I understand. Ending something is always sad, but
Yeah.
one of the rules of life that most people are upset about that they don't take, it's a given in life, is everything ends, right? Everything changes. But my view is, and something new begins, right? It's like it's the call of adventure when, the hero's journey, it's there. So I think you either have to decide and commit, ideally resolve, or not kid yourself about it because it may not be that important to you.
Yeah, that's a great
It's
point.
like you might be doing, virtue signaling to yourself. It doesn't sound like you told anybody else, but that's people do that too. They don't just virtue signal stupidly on social media. They do it to themselves.
Yeah, it's fascinating you say that. My husband is a former Navy SEAL, and so he is so
He
committed
knows how
to
to
his
commit
word.
and resolve.
He does. And one thing that he's taught me lately that has helped the last couple of years is if we make a decision and we are committed to it, he does a thing that now I have a word for it, I guess, which is this idea of commitment and resolve. He'll say, like, for instance, we had something we wanted to do, and he was like, okay, well, what are you going to do if you don't hit that goal?
That's it.
And I said, I don't know. What do you want me to do? What's on the table? We put in cash and put it. And he was like, that's not big enough. And he's like, it not only has to be cash, which would bother you, but something that would bother you so much that you're not going to execute.
That's right.
And so he's like, so if you don't execute on this, we're going to write a check. And on the check, you're going to put $10,000 and you're going to say, Democratic Socialist Party of America. And if you don't do this, I'm sending the check with your name on it and you're going to be on the donor list. And I was like, oh no, now I'm really in it and I have to commit to this. And so now I have a framework. But it's, what's fascinating about you is these little small things in life aren't so small. They accumulate to everything in life. It's this compounding effect.
Decision-making, I think, is one of the top 5 skills in life.
What are the other 4?
I wouldn't lock them in. I'd say managing your state is one of the most important. I think how to build relationships is certainly one of the most important. Your capacity to create a vision for your life is extremely important. Moving from being a manager to a creator is extremely important. Most people are managing their lives. They're making a living. They're not designing their life. Or, even in business, part of what helps you grow in business is when you stop becoming a manager. Managers always want to know techniques. And by the way, I have plenty of techniques I've learned over the years, but I'm much more interested at this stage in my life in what is behind the technique that makes somebody follow through, right? Techniques are cute and they might work, but then eventually the technique becomes your new toy that will become your new limitation, right? So I think it's important to look for what's behind it all. If you shift what's behind it all, you shift everything, right? That's my focus.
Do you ever not keep promises to yourself now?
That's a great question. Yes, there's one that I've not kept to myself, to be honest. It's the only one I can think of. I don't know that I promised myself, honestly. That's the truth. And that is, I'd slow my schedule down.
You're not keeping that. I know that for a fact.
No, you can tell by my voice. No, I've not kept that promise. But honestly, it's like I got a phone call last night from a dear friend of mine, and he's got a friend that's suicidal in the middle of the night. And it's like, I get these calls every day. Somebody's got, cancer, somebody's got whatever. And I have such a database of businesses and relationships, in the health area and the relationship area, and the business area, and the finance area, and the emotional well-being area, that I find myself called. And so then I end up being up for 2.5 hours to help this stranger not do those things. And so, but what my wife and I are going to have a meeting this next week, and I'm going to have to take it from decide to commit to resolve, because I think I decided, but I didn't really commit and resolve because I'm so called.
Yeah.
That's the thing too. It's like people have different ways of motivating themselves. I've never been a motivator. I don't even like the term. Motivation is a good thing. It's like a warm bath or shower. You should probably have one every day, but it's not enough, right? You need strategy. You need follow through. But what I'm really interested in is like, what's deeper than that? What's the inner drive in that? And when I look around at what's happening in people's lives, and I say, what? You can think of it as this way. You can think of there's like, let's say, pull motivation and push motivation. Push is what most people use. I'm going to push myself through and I'm going to make this happen. Well, that takes enormous, I would say, inner strength. And you clearly have that. I clearly have that. Inner drive. But everybody's only got so much of that, right? What's unlimited is pull motivation, pull drive. That's something that is something you care about more than yourself, so much more than yourself, that it's not effortful. It gives you an energy that's also almost feels superhuman to other people. And it's because this is what you're made for. And when you find that, it's been said before, the two most important days of your life are the day that you're born and the day you discover what you're born for, right? I know what I'm born for. And so changing that in my life and saying, I'm not going to do that, I have to find somewhere in between the two. I have to find what I am willing to commit to in that process. So that's interesting. My first response in my head was, no, of course I keep my word to myself for everything. And probably still is true, because my word to myself is I will always show up when it matters most for people.
Wow. Yeah, you almost have like a higher priority than you've even realized above the sub priority.
Yeah.
Well, it's so timely because you're having an event in January, and I really wanted to go to. I was going to go to your last event, and we're in the mix of all this fertility stuff. And so
I understand.
It's one of the first times where I haven't been able to keep my word as often as I'm used to other people. And it's out of my control for the first time.
I understand.
Owning a business is incredible until a slip-on site or a pissed-off client or a tiny mistake turns into a very expensive problem. If you're not covered, that can actually wipe out months, even years of work. That's why smart owners use Next Insurance. It's coverage built specifically for small businesses, all online, all instant. So no paperwork, no waiting, no corporate runaround nonsense. Whether you run a cleaning crew, a fitness studio, or a business you bought on Main Street, Next keeps you protected so you can keep building. Taking risk is part of the game. Being protected is how you win it. Head to nextinsurance.com/Codie and check them out. I love the idea of this event because, new year, new you. There are all these things around this time of year.
Yes.
But we don't actually keep our promises to ourselves for the most part. And one of the ways that I, in the beginning, maybe thought of you was like, oh, it's positive thinking. We have to positive think. And that is actually the opposite.
No, I don't even believe in I don't believe in negative thinking. It doesn't help you. I believe you need to find what's true. And I don't believe you should go to your garden and there's weeds there, so you chant, there's no weeds, there's no weeds, there's no weeds. It's like, no, reach down and grab the weeds, right? You got to see what's real. You got to see it as is, but also not see it worse than it is. Most people see it worse than it is because they're afraid of failing, so then they don't try, right? And then you got to see it better than it is, because without a vision, people perish, right? You have to have a vision, and then you got to make it that way, and that's where the strategy comes in, right? So that's how I look at it. But no, I've never been into positive thinking per se. When they did the Secret, they came to me to be part of Secret. I said, I will not participate in a million years. This is bullshit. They said, so you're saying the law of attraction is bullshit? I said, no, law of attraction is real. It's one of dozens of laws. And you're saying that's the whole game? And I remember this guy was saying, yeah, but I was coming here to talk with you about this. And he said, and I was running late and I thought green, green, green. And I got all green lights. I said, well, what's going to happen when you're coming to see me and you get all red lights? You're going to say you're thinking about it? Are you telling me some person who was in Alcatraz was there, or not Alcatraz, but in Germany, in a concentration camp, that they were just a negative thinker? Sometimes not getting what you want is what the universe or God wants for you. So you develop lessons, skills, muscles, strengths, caring that you wouldn't have had without it. So it's not just that. There's other things like capabilities. There's like skill sets. You can't do that. So I was revolted against that. And I watched it go like this and of course crash, because everybody wants the oversimplistic view of life, but it won't get you results. Just thinking positive is not going to do it. Thinking negative will certainly hurt your life, but that's not the full gig.
No matter how bad I want it, if I go try to one-on-one you on that basketball court, I don't think I'm winning. You got like just a tiny few inches more than I do. But it's important because these days I live in Austin, Texas, and there is so much, if you think it, you will get it. And if you rub this crystal, I brought a crystal, I like a crystal, but I still don't think it's going to fix everything for me.
No. I mean, listen, I think thoughts are real, and whatever you think about consistently, you tend to manifest in your life. But there are other things beyond just that one force of what you want. And to think otherwise is think you're the center of the universe, which is absurd to me, right? If that was true, why wouldn't we just get whatever we want immediately? Well, because you'd be spoiled rotten, you wouldn't care about anything or anyone. I mean, think about it. When you were born, what'd you have to do to be loved?
Nothing.
Scream, yell, go to the bathroom in your pants, throw up all over your mom or your dad. You're still loved, right? But there was a day when that stopped. And that's the day that fear entered your body. That's the day you try to figure out what to do. So because to survive, you need love. Love is where someone puts their needs aside for yours, right? And as humans, we're like different than other animals. Some animals, there's egg, you crack, and you never see your mother and father, but you have some competitive advantage. You have horns, you have teeth, you have camouflage, right? Our competitive advantage is love. And so our capacity to feel that caring allows us to connect, allows us to work with others, allows us to expand beyond what other people can possibly do. And so I look at it and say, okay, if this is our capacity, why is it that we have this unconditional love in the beginning and then everybody pursues it for the rest of their life and rarely feels it? Because if you're unconditional love forever, you'd never grow. You never bring anything to the world. It would all be about me, just like ridiculous. So you have to grow up and realize life's not about you, it's about we. And the more you contribute, the better. Business is a spiritual game. It's a perfect example. Every religion on earth has some version of love thy neighbor like thyself. Different versions of it, but a version of that principle within it, right? Karma, whatever you want to call it. When you fall in love with your client, not just fall in love with your customer, your product or service, that's going to change. Fall in love with your client and you're trying to do everything you can to meet their needs. And you turn them into a raving fan and you love on them and you think constantly about meeting their needs like a mom does their kid or like a best friend does for somebody they really care about. You're going to grow in business. You're going to grow anything that you do. But we're not meant to just have unconditional love because then we wouldn't grow, right? We need to grow. We need to expand. And so otherwise, all these stupid thoughts like, oh, I'm just going to think and it's going to happen to be there. Plus, if you went to Vegas, what's the worst thing to happen if you go to Vegas?
Well, in this case, maybe lose all your money.
No, the worst thing that can happen is win.
Oh, interesting. Of course.
Yes.
Then you think you're skilled.
Steve Wynn's a good friend of mine. He built most of Las Vegas.
So he disagrees.
I was with him one day, and this guy won a $10 million jackpot. And Steve is a very tight guy in finance, right? Very tight guy. Like he knows what every one of his retailers is doing, and he wants the maximum dollar for each one. And Louis Vuitton wasn't paying him enough. He'd get very upset. I'm like, you're doing quite fine, right? He says, no, I want to. But when a person won, I saw none of that. So I finally said, Steve, usually you're pretty uptight about something like this. He goes, no, Tony, don't you know? You see all the people around him, see all the pictures. That guy will come back for the rest of his life, but so all these other people. He goes, the odds are my odds. He goes, that makes me money. I'm in it for the long game. That's how it works here. But if you went to Vegas and let's say you pulled one of those Warren bandits and you get the jackpot, what was your response going to be?
Sweet.
Awesome. Yeah. Second time.
Probably less excited, but still excited.
100 times every time you get the same victory. Now it's called a job.
That's fascinating.
Right? So we need jackpots in our life to make us feel alive. If you got everything you wanted every moment, you'd be bored out of your mind.
It's such a good point. What's interesting about you is, I think a lot of people struggle with people pleasing, right? And, maybe they try to do things that other people think will make them likable. Yeah. You seem to do the opposite. Like you are so comfortable pushing buttons, saying hard truths, and at least what I've seen publicly, kind of pushing people out of their comfort zone. And I know
they don't do that till they first know how much I care. I earned that right. They see that. I don't just come in like a jerk and go this, because
No, I don't think
really
you come
do.
off that way. But I think that's scary for people, even
It is
though
scary.
I do believe a lot of times that's what we need. We need like Chris, my husband calls it a benevolent bully, somebody to push you like you need it.
Yeah.
Have you always been like that? Or how did you learn to push people the way they needed to?
No, I was more of a pleaser growing up. Everyone has a dominant force in their life. My mom was the dominant force, and she was. I had 4 different fathers, so she was the dominant force, as you might guess. She was quite a force of nature. Got rid of them one after another, and I learned to please her, or I was quite physical with her. And I was 5'1" in high school, and then even when I grew 10 inches in a year, I learned to bend my hair down so she could grab my hair and smack me against the wall. She was a beautiful woman. I don't want to give you the wrong impression. She was as loving as you could be, but she abused, alcohol and prescription drugs. And when you put those two together, you become a different personality. So I had to work out in my head, how do you deal with someone whose love you crave the most, who's trying to harm you, but loves you, And so rather than go through the whole victim bullshit, there's not any part of me that's ever been a victim. It's like, okay, she's wired with pain, and I got to figure out how to, basically I became a practical psychologist because of her. I had to figure out how to manage her states, her emotions, so I could protect my younger brother, 5 years younger, the younger sister, 7 years younger. And I got really good at it, as I had to be. But then also with women in my life and relationship, in the beginning, I was all pleasing all the time, which is a woman I'm sure you know. It's probably why you married a Navy SEAL. Having a pleaser doesn't please a woman.
No.
Men are confused by that. They're like, she wants me to please him. Yes, she wants to be pleased, but she doesn't want you to be a pleaser. What the F does that mean, right? So I learned that lesson. But even during that time, when I stood up to serve someone, I'm there to serve someone. Yeah. So if I will, at the end of an intervention, you saw I'm not your guru. There was a moment there where I was working with a young woman who was part of this cult where they raped children and said it was for God. And, she was in such a horrible place. And so I did this work, and it's like I feel like God comes through me in those moments. I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, but as you say, it looks like magic, and it's different every time. And so afterwards, this group pushed on the door, and I was like, after those things are done, very often I can't show any emotion then because I'm there with them. If I fully feel what they're feeling, I can't help them, but I am feeling it inside. I put it in a box, and then I go to the back room there, and then I just start bawling for what this woman has been through. Just even thinking now, it makes me emotional thinking about it. And the guys that were doing the show said, "No, we had to have direct access," and they opened the doors, and you see me there crying, and but it's because this is what I'm made for. It's like I hate suffering, hate to see anyone suffer, and so I am unbelievably committed to end suffering any way I can. But I also know my own suffering will not help that person who's suffering. So I need a call to a higher part of them. And I can do it in multiple ways. I can do it with humor, I can do it with intensity, I can do it with fun, I can do it being weird, but I will find the way to get them there. And it's different every time. And that's my art. That's where you can call it the universe. I call it God comes through you because you're trying to serve something more than yourself. You get different insights. If you're just trying to serve yourself, you get a certain level of insight. If you've got a family you care about, you're trying to serve your family, you get a different level of insight, trying to serve, a community, the world. I don't mean virtue signaling bullshit. I mean, what's in your heart. The level of insights that are given to me that I can't possibly know about a person while they're standing there. Like people think there's a script backstage or people come up, even the guys who are filming, so they went, do you have an earpiece or something? And I was like, what are you talking about? They came and literally checked to see if I had an earpiece. Like, how could you know that about her? And I was like, I just knew, I just knew immediately. So the emotion I go through is enormous. It's not like I'm just cold and this is how it is. And usually by the end of it, the person feels very loved and very taken care of. They have the breakthrough that they're looking for. But, I had this conversation with Oprah one day. Women are so abused by our society. When I say abused, I don't want to just be derogatory, but, women are put in this image of who they're supposed to look like, be like, act like. And women to me are unbelievable. You're about to be a mom. There's another part of you that'll come alive when you're a mom. It's unbelievable what women do. How their kids don't know it and don't understand it is mind-boggling to me. But to be a mom and a business person and to be a lover and to be a husband or wife and all those things at one time, it takes just unbelievable energy, strength, and so forth. And when I see what happens with women generalizing about themselves, like I'm just a homemaker or something, makes me crazy. But the one thing women have, if a woman isn't super attractive, is they have support. Men don't have that. Men don't go share their feelings. We don't go talk about our relationships, right? I remember we were having a program in Mexico, and this one was saying, you were with your friend and you know he got divorced and you don't know if he's dating. He says, we played golf. And she goes, and it didn't come up? He goes, how would it come up? And she was just like stunned because she thinks how a woman would think versus how a man's brain would think, right? And so I say this because I was telling Oprah, I said, one of the beautiful things about the sisterhood, if a woman's really attractive, sometimes there's backbiting and there's the opposite. There's not the support. There's just tremendous support. Women share their problems. Men don't share their problems. Men's job is to solve a problem. And then you get with a woman in your life and you want to solve it for them. In the man's world, the more you solve problems, the more you move up the hierarchy of being a man. In a woman's world, no, you share your problems so you can connect and feel for the person, right? And you want to stay with it and so forth. So what happens with that is it's actually good for a feeling of support, but it does not create breakthroughs. Because women will support other women in terrible beliefs, terrible states, they have a terrible relationship, and they talk to two other women who have a terrible relationship about what they should do in the relationship, and it's all him. It's no matter how thin you slice it, there's two sides. There's him and there's you, right?
Yep.
And so I was doing an event one time for 5,000 women in Radio Music Hall for Oprah. It was all women. I never heard that high a pitch of sounds in my entire life in one room. And she said, okay, well, I want you to do an intervention like this. I said, well, Oprah, interventions can take 15 minutes. They can take an hour. I go and tell, it can take 2 hours. She goes, well, we don't have that. I said, I know, and you're doing this program live. She goes, well, I think you could do it in the timeline. And I said, okay, but I said, I also have to be willing to do whatever it takes. She goes, of course. And I already had this conversation with her about, you can't support women just in their limitations. If you really care about them, you got to call truth 100%. With them. You can still be supportive. And so this woman stands up and she talks about how she's lost her business because of 9/11. And she's not been able to build it because of her husband and her kids. And she's 110 pounds overweight. And it's because they all demand something from her every moment. Now, I'm a lover of women. Like, I think women are, no man on this planet got here without a woman. I mean, through women who risk their life for you to be here. That's my core belief about women. I hold women like this. But this is bullshit, right? I got plenty of friends that had, in the building 9/11, their business didn't go under. So it's not 9/11 that did it, right? And your husband didn't make you 110 pounds overweight, nor did your children. And so everything she's saying is a lie. And the women around her are like, ooh. I'm surrounded by 5,000 women. I go, F it, I can't do this. I can't not do this. I said, now, what you just told me is total, absolute bullshit. And the whole room went, it was like shock. And then there's sounds, and I'm like, I'm not being mean. But if you want transformation, if you want to change your life, you cannot do it by blaming everybody else for what you've done. 9/11 is a horrific thing. I'm sure it massively interrupted your business. But she wasn't even in the building. She wasn't even close to the building. I said, this is not why your business went under. You're making excuses. And I'm saying this because I care. Excuses will only hurt you. And right now, you don't have a relationship with your husband, clearly, by the way you're talking about. You don't even have a relationship with your kids. And that's another reason why you're probably 110 pounds overweight. You're bearing your emotion with food, right? And then all of a sudden, there started to be some sounds. And then Oprah says, and she's behind me about, like 50 yards. It's a giant building, right? She goes, but Tony, to be fair, and I snapped back and I looked at her like this. I'll never forget, because I was in state. When I'm in state, you don't break my state, right? And she goes, oh, I'm doing that thing, aren't I? And I said, yes, you're doing that thing, right? So I had to go to a break, and I just kept working with her. By the time I was done, I brought her back and got her in a great place. And a year later, she was on Dr. Oz. She lost 115 pounds. She had a relationship back. She'd restarted a new business, right? So sometimes you got to do what's uncomfortable. And so, yes, I'm willing to do that to have someone's life change, because otherwise you're just making yourself feel good. I can make myself feel good and her feel good and go, gosh, that's so horrible. I understand, and all those things. But F that. If you stood up, my belief is if you stand up in my room, something's caused you to stand up. Some part of you wants transformation, or you wouldn't be in my presence. And it's going to happen.
God, so true. I think that's one of the saddest things about what happened with sort of the PC-ness of society today, is that so many people feel like they can't say the thing that might actually help because it might hurt somebody's feelings.
Where did we get up this thing that you're not supposed to offend anybody? Here's a question for you. Can people be offended by anything if they want to be?
Yes, but I don't think that should change what I do because of it.
No, but I'm just saying, but so anyone who said, where do we come up with this new magical rule? You're not supposed to offend anybody. If you're not going to offend anybody, you're not going to have any impact. I think it was it Emerson who said, be nothing, do nothing, say nothing, and create nothing. That's how you can be sure you're never attacked, right? I'm not willing to do that. I've got a purpose. And of course, some people are not going to understand it. But people in my seminars do. That's why they're still there 12 hours later. When they wouldn't sit for a 3-hour movie, they won't get up to go to the bathroom because they're watching real life as it's happening. It's more dramatic than anything you could write in a script because it's real. Because like even today, reality television is bullshit. It's made up, right? People know it's fake. You feel when something's real. And when something's real, you can relate to it. And it calls to some part of you to be more real. And when we're vulnerable and we're real, we can change anything. But when we try to soften it, like use all the language, pretty good, it's okay, all that kind of stuff. Those softeners keep you from getting to the place where you could actually have a transformation.
It's so true. Yeah, I got in trouble on the internet a few weeks ago because I said, I don't think you should cry in business meetings just because you can't express yourself fully. Like I think if you need to self-regulate, like you could step out, whatever, but I don't think that you should have a belief that it will help you and it is totally fine if you cry in business meetings. That is just not our society.
There's no crying in baseball.
Yeah, there's just not. And it's happened to me a few times and whatever. If you cry, I'm not going to do you. I don't think it's going to help your career. But
you didn't tell them they couldn't cry, right? You just said that I don't think it'll help you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you got a tag for that, of course.
Of course. Yeah. Okay, I want to play like a couple little games. One is I hear that you like this pattern interrupt exercise. And this gives me anxiety to even ask you these questions. But like the idea is we give you a series of negative patterns and then you say how you would break free from them. And what I find fascinating about you is like you kind of just in the moment already know the thing to say.
It to the person. Right. It has to be like, I need to know what's going on, but I'll give you some general things if you want. But
okay, well, let me give you some examples.
What would be a pattern up for you versus me versus another person is different based on your model of the world, right?
Interesting.
So it's like, what based on what you believe. And I figure that out very quickly when I'm doing an intervention with someone. And so I'll figure out what it is. If I know, for example, you value significance the most, then I might show you how by doing whatever it's costing you the significance. And I'll have leverage there. If you're driven by love, then I will use love as the metaphor. If you're driven by certainty, then I'll show you how it'll take away your certainty if you keep doing this, right? So I'm looking for leverage. It's not just breaking a pattern. That's like a stupid technique, that won't last. It has to be tied to something there's an inner drive about. So we all have 6 needs, human needs. Certainty, everybody has it. It's a survival need because certainty you can be comfortable because if you're not comfortable, if you're in pain regularly, regular pain means damage, regular damage equals death. So it's the base need for human beings. But if you're certain all the time, you're bored silly, so you need uncertainty, right? You need variety, you need surprise. We need significance. Our culture way overvalues significance today because of social media.
That's
like people, put on filters and pretend they're different than they are. One of my buddies has his own gym, and he told me this the other day, I couldn't even believe it. He said, on a daily basis, women and sometimes men come in who are, influencers, because he's got a great gym. They lay out all the equipment, they take all these pictures, and they leave. They don't work out a single ounce. When you're 27 to 32, you have to be an idiot to not be fit, right? I mean, it's like decent genetics and you can be fit, right? So, but they're making money off of it. They don't do anything. It's just about looking good, right? And then using their looking good to try to make money. So, I mean, that's going to wear off for them, unfortunately, at some stage in their life, right? So it's like, significance is overvalued. The need for connection and love is the deepest need that people have. But most people want certain love. And so they try to control the love and kills it. Or they want significant love. Like it's got to be the most significant thing. And then they start to promote who they are more than they are because they think that's what's necessary and they're not truthful, right? And then we need to grow. We need to contribute. Those are the spiritual needs. If you don't grow, your relationship's not growing. If your business is not growing, it's dying. That's the law of life. Everything grows or dies. But also when you grow, then you have something to give. What makes people have a meaningful life is to feel like there's something beyond yourself. Because meeting your own basic needs, any idiot can do. You can lie to yourself and do that. You can work just 12-hour days and do that. There's a million ways you can meet those basic needs of certainty and uncertainty and significance and connection at least, not so much love. But when I look at people, I try to see what's driving them. And then I know better which pattern will work. But go ahead and give me your list and I'll just give you some simplistic responses.
Can you tell right away after meeting somebody what their one of the 6 is?
6 needs. I look to see what are their top 2.
And what if you know nothing about them?
I ask questions along the way very
you
quickly.
ask a lot of questions all the time.
One person counted one time. I had a woman who was suicidal. And a guy in the back who was a trainer was writing down, I asked 167 questions before I made one statement.
Fascinating. So you ask questions to figure it out. What about, you have a lot of businesses now, and can you tell immediately if somebody is somebody you should partner with or not?
No, I can't tell immediately. I can get seduced because people put on their best behavior. They're going on a date, right? So I look at it this way. If I'm going to evaluate somebody, I have 3 questions. Same way as what you would have in your business or on a date. Can they do the job? If I'm interviewing them in one of my companies, by the time it gets to me, of course they can do the job, or I wouldn't be interviewing them, right? Or if you were dating, can they do the job? If you've been dating them 6 months, yeah, they can do it. The more important question is, can they do that job well long-term, right? Will they keep doing a great job? Because everyone does a great job in the beginning, right? And what determines that is, are their goals in alignment with the job, right? So I remember years ago, we had a woman that worked for us for 5 years as our personal assistant, and we were traveling the world, and we were pretty 24/7, and you become part of our family, right? And we love her and still do. She's still a close member of our family, but she fell in love with another of our employees and had a child, and so she needed to stay put. So we had to replace her. And so we went to the LA, because we were living in California at the time, Southern California, went to the LA Personal Assistants Association. We went through 5 hires in 5 months, and none of them were even close to good. And they all sounded so good to start with. And then one day I realized, we're fishing in the sewer. Who comes to LA to become a personal assistant? They don't come to become a personal assistant so they can help people, change the world, help a family. They come because I discovered they wanted my clientele. They want to talk to Quincy Jones in those days, or Anthony Hopkins, or Sly Stallone, or whoever it was that I was dealing with at the time. And they would treat them like gold and treat all my other clients and friends like they were dirt, right? Including my wife, so I get rid of them. So I realized, you've got to decide, where are you going to find somebody who's more aligned with the job and their nature and their goals? Or I have a friend that I bumped into in Fiji one time. I have a resort in Fiji, and my wife and I were flying commercial in those days still. And we, you go through immigration, there's about 5 lines. I said, honey, why don't we go on this line here? It looks like it's fast. She goes, no, this line's faster. I said, look, honey, this one's actually fast. She goes, I think this one's faster. I said, fine, you go on that line, I'll go on this line. And we play these silly games, and we're going to race. So we're going back and forth. I'm ahead, then she's ahead, back and forth. We're being silly. And this man hears my voice, because I said that to my wife. And he goes, Tony, and I turn around and look. And it's this guy, I hadn't seen him in about 9 years, brilliant businessman. And I said, what are you doing here? He goes, what are you doing here? I said, well, I'm here with my wife. I have a resort here. I'm here to take a few weeks off. And he said, you have a resort here? I said, yeah. I said, where are you going? He told me. I said, oh, too bad. We're the #1 resort. I teased him. I said, but what are you here for? He goes, I just got married. I said, again, it was his 3rd marriage. He goes, yeah. And I said, well, where's your bride? She was standing next to Sage, and they were doing the same thing we were doing. So, you're in the line. And I said, so how long have you known her? Because I'm talking to you, 7, 8 years? He goes, yeah, probably just a little bit of last time I saw her, probably 7 years. So, her 7 years, you're just now getting married. I said, how come? He goes, she wore me down. And I thought, oof. So then quickly I'm trying to change the conversation in my head. I'm like, well, are you going to have kids? He goes, Tony, I've had 2 families before this. I went through all of that. I lost all my money twice. We are not. I said, well, I looked across and this woman's like 29 years old and he's 48. I said, have you had a discussion about this? He goes, yes, that was my deal. If we get married, no kids. So I'm thinking, oh my God, he's in for a rough ride. So we get to the front, we introduce each other's spouses and they go off and I look at my wife and she looks at me and I go, they're in trouble. She goes, oh, you have no idea. I said, I think I did. What'd you learn? She told him, yeah, he thinks we're not going to have a kids, but we'll have within 2 years. And they did. And he got divorced for a 3rd time. The problem is they didn't have their goals aligned. You don't have to have all your goals aligned, but on major issues like a child or not, it's got to be aligned or you're not going to sustain that relationship. So whether it's a business or whether I use business because it's easier to modulate in your head, right?
Yep.
Or a relationship, it's the critical element there. And then the last part is it the right team fit? In a business, you can relate to this, I'm sure, because all those businesses you run. You can have somebody who's a superstar, but they're the wrong team fit.
Oh, yeah.
They rub against everybody else. They piss everybody else off. And maybe they're like your top salesperson or your top marketing person, your top whatever. And you don't want to get rid of them because, man, they bring in a lot of revenue. But unless you do, they'll destroy your business. They've always said, it's not the person you fail to hire, it's the person you fail to fire that destroys your business. And so I'm a big believer in testing. Now, one of the things I do with partnerships today, just as a little clue, I shared this with Patrick Bet David the other day, and I didn't realize how important he thought it was. And I was like, I guess it really is. He said, because I've been through so many rough ones. I said, I was too. But what I do is a full background check on everyone now. And it saves me enormous amount. And I tell them up front, listen, I'm an open book. Please do a full background check, everything on me that you want to check. But I don't go into any partnerships without a full background check. It's not out of disrespect. It's out of respect so that we know. And if there's anything that you want to share with us or anything comes up that you think is inappropriate, you can share it with me. I'll give you the report and so forth. Well, the panic you see in some people's eyes, then the tightening in some people, and then the people are like, no, it's totally fine. And then you get the report and then they never call you back. I mean, I have saved myself so much money, time, and energy by having that one investment in a long-term relationship up front.
So smart. I wish I would have done that earlier on. Although I think some of the biggest partnership mistakes I made were cheap in retrospect. Like they were painful, but you're like, I needed to lose that money. I needed to lose that relationship, or I would have kept having the same pattern.
Yeah, there's always a benefit. But as the years go by, you'll probably be less tolerant of having those things happen.
True. Well, it's heartbreaking, I think,
Yes.
because the partnerships, I remember one in particular. I thought we were buddies. I was like,
I've been there.
Yeah, I'm like, I met your baby. I thought we were best buds. And, there was one instance where they kind of targeted me. I was on the internet and I didn't realize there's this type of human that, I guess there are predators everywhere.
Yeah.
And so then I had to realize, where am I short in my analysis of people?
Yes.
And how did I sell myself on what I wanted instead of what was in front of me?
Most of my most important skills came from some early mistakes with people, one of which I had two partners, and I brought them on board and made a deal with them that was ridiculously good for them. But it was based still on some results. And they absolutely stole $758,000, $250 of the $758,000 put me in debt. $758,000. My company was doing $1 million. Wow. So not billions, $1 million, right? So it was like all the money I knew, and I'd been on the road 225 days, and everybody told me I have to go bankrupt. And I wanted to kill this guy. He fled to Mexico, and I realized, well, I'm chasing him in Mexico. My business is going to go under. So I went to Fiji, and I was so angry at him, but I said, no, who I'm most angry with is me, because how did I not see this, right? I don't care how good he presented. Was it about human behavior? I don't fully understand. And I was second day in Fiji in this sweaty little hut. And I went to sleep with that thought, just burning thought. I woke up the next morning and I wrote literally for 6 straight hours filled up 3 journals, all these distinctions I made. And I created my Date with Destiny program because I did it to me. That's my favorite program. It's the only seminar I've been through because I did it for me. Changed everything, rewired me so that, sometimes you have values that pull you apart. Like you want to please everybody and you want to be as successful as you can. You want to be totally honest. You want everybody totally happy, right? And I learned how to align my values so that I was pulled instead of having to push or being pulled in different directions. And it was the first time in my life I felt calm. And everybody around me is like, you're so different. It was like a rewiring for myself. So I agree with you. Sometimes your biggest mistakes, if you learn from them, are the most important ones. But I don't want to make the same mistakes. And so I look for systems to help with that as well.
You have a program coming up in January that's Time to Rise Summit. I've never been to this one before.
Yes.
I want to hear about it. And I also want to hear about how you prepare for these shows that you do, because I hear you obsessively prepare even to this day for the shows you put on. Is that true?
That's true. I believe in overloading my brain because I never know what's going to happen. Like, because I don't just do a rote talk, right? I sometimes I'll prepare everything and then I go out into the audience and I feel different things. I see people, I see where they are, and I have to adjust. Also, could you imagine, this will be my 49th year I'm about to begin. So I would be bored out of my brain if I was just doing the exact thing. Now, I know there's certain things that work and what to do, but I have to be able to adapt to feel alive and do art. And art is something that's different every time. It's not the same. And it's also what challenges me. So I feed my brain everything I can, and then I trust when I step on the stage, what'll be necessary is there.
How do you feed it? Like, what does that look like?
Well, for example, my Date with Destiny, I have people fill out about a 20-page interview report. There's 5,000 of them. And I read them for a week. So not everybody does it, by the way. Some people wait till the last minute, so or don't turn in at all. It's only your destiny. Don't worry about it, right? But what it gives me is the patterns in the room. I may not remember every name, every story, but I remember what the patterns are. And then when somebody stands up, even if it wasn't that person, I know if I can work with this person and help them transform, I could be affecting 50 or 100 people simultaneously, right? Yeah. That I consciously know about. That's how I load my brain. I also brainstorm out different examples or tools. I'm always coming up with something new in terms of insight or strategy. And then, but the event you're talking about is a really unique event. I started it because of COVID, because I was used to doing stadiums, right? And in 2020, the governor of California, his team calls me up. I know him well, not a big fan.
Newsom called you?
Yeah, well, Newsom had his team call me, and then he wrote me directly. He was upset about me telling the world that he canceled the event, which he did, right? He said, "You're not making me look good," he said. I'm like,
you go, "That's you."
Like, you're a nice man. I like you personally, but I don't agree with your policies, right? This is ridiculous. So we had an event there for 14,000 people, and 2 weeks before, he sends out the message to me from his team and says, "You can only put 100 people in the stadium, our new rules." I said, I said to his people, I said, "This is absurd. You know we can't put 100 people in a stadium. What are we going to do with the other, 13,000, 900 people?" And so I said, "Screw them. I'm going to move this thing to Vegas. They'll never shut down Vegas," right? So 2 weeks before, we moved 14,000 people to Vegas, and they shut down Vegas, right? So then I'm like, oh my God, I mean, I need to help these people. The time they need us most is during this time because everybody's depressed and upset and not know what's going to happen. So I said, okay, let's move it to Texas. Texas is its own country. I met the governor there. I don't know him personally really well, but I've met him. He says he's not going to shut down. 7 days before they shut down Vegas, we rented a big church, 14,000 people. So then I was like, I'm just relentless. I'm like, okay, well, they allow you to put 10 people in a movie theater. And I said, okay, we'll do 1,400 movie theaters, local for people that don't have to travel. We'll have big screens, we'll have big sound, at least 10 people interacting with each other. Then they shut down the movie theaters. So I was like, okay, we're going to build a studio. And my CFO was like, "You're going to build a studio?" Like, we lost $100 million in 6 months because I didn't want to fire anybody. Because he kept saying we're 10 more days to stop the whatever the language was used in those days. And I was like, so I said, we can't wait. So I bought a building because I couldn't build it fast enough. 50-foot high ceilings. I built 22-foot high LED screens, made them 50 feet around me, and got 0.67 resolution, highest resolution in the world. I could see more in your face than I can even see now because you're this much bigger, right? And then I called Eric Yuan, the founder of Zoom, and said, 1,200 people is not going to work. I need 25,000 people. And he's a fan of mine, so he changed the tech so we could do it. And then I hired all these people. They all said, we can't do this in 9 weeks. And I said, well, then you're not working here. And I just kept going through people. We literally, the night before, were putting it all together. And we got up, we did this event, and we had people from all over the earth that participated. And I had 193 countries there. And we had over 25,000 people. Normally we'd have 15,000. So it was even more people because they could do it from different places in the world they wanted to. So then I was like, okay, I want to reach everybody. Let's do an event for free. Let's do one event for 3 days, not just an hour thing or two. Let's do like 2.5 hours a day for 3 days, enough to give people a real transformation. We'll do it right at the beginning of the year. It's kind of the comeback challenge. I called it back then. It's now called Time to Rise. And the comeback story is the best story of your life. You're down, everything's not working. That's what inspires people. This is the comeback time. And we put it together. We had 1 million people show up, 1,000,001. And now we've done it for 7 straight years. I think this will be the last year I'll do it. My schedule's so full. But I would do one last one. And we're going to do it for 3 days. And people from 193 countries attend, every country in the world. And we go for, like I say, 2.5 hours. And we help you not just make a New Year's resolution, which nobody keeps, right? Because they don't have a plan, they don't have a strategy or anything else. We help you create the breakthroughs that are necessary. And you become part of a really cool community because we have a Facebook community. And so in the middle of the night, I give people an assignment and they make these videos and you see people transforming from all over the earth, every age group, every direction, every country, every language. So I love that aspect of it. And there's no charge for it. Literally, it's free. So if people go to Time to Rise Summit, timetoRiseSummit.com, timetoRiseSummit.com, they can register for it and they can attend it. And you can think of it like going to a great 2.5 hour movie 3 days in a row, but instead of just being entertained, at the end of it, your life is really transformed. And then, we've done so much value for people, then some people decide they want to do other things with us, which is wonderful, but there's no requirement in any way, shape, or form. And it's been my way to give back. It was desperately needed during COVID. And then we just, kept the momentum for it for now.
Do I get claps at the event? The Tony Robbins claps? You do, don't you? Because it's my favorite part of the event. Well, I can't wait to come to this next one. I can't wait to see what this next evolution
that's the thing about it.
looks
You don't
for.
have to come to it. It's digital. So you can do it from
my couch.
You can do it from your couch. You can do it from your office. And we start here at 10 in the morning. It's midnight in what do you call it? Sydney, Australia, for example, and they go each day all the way through it as well till 3 or 4 in the morning. So you'll be joined by people all over the earth, and you'll have a cool community of people that all have something in common. They want more. They're not willing to settle.
Yeah.
If you want more for your life, if you want, it's time to rise and take more out of your life. You don't want to have next year be the same as last year. Then you need some tools. You need some inspiration. You need some community. And you need some days where it's actually going to happen. Like you said, put it on the calendar and make it lock. So it's coming up January 29th through the 31st. January 29th through 31st. And if they go to timetorisesummit.com, get you signed up and lock it in your calendar. And I encourage people, bring your family, bring your friends or your coworkers at the office and do it. It'll be an experience you won't forget.
You got to get clear. In the next 3 months, how much do you want to make?
Today is probably the most tactical blueprint on making your first dollars and completely changing the way you interact with money. And it's with my friend Lewis Howes. He is a multiple-time New York Times bestselling author. He runs one of the biggest podcasts in the world called School of Greatness.
We all have a money story. Money doesn't heal who you are, it reveals who you are. And until you learn to heal, then it's just going to reveal.
It is therapy, but it's a different type.
It is. Most people have an emotional reaction with money.
47% of Americans die broke? And why?
You got to heal your money wounds. People may not want to hear this.
Hi, I'm Codie Sanchez, and this is the Big Deal podcast. I have struggled with this question for the better part of a decade. What do I tell people who don't have money, who have a bad relationship with money, who don't know how to go further with money? But I think today, for the first time ever, I just heard how to make money even when you have $0 and how to start exactly where you are with what you've got. I was shocked when I started learning about this book because I think most humans will not be able to make money, not because they don't have the tactics, but because you don't actually know how you feel about money, and thus money doesn't know how it feels about you. So if today you feel like you need more money in your life, you should absolutely listen to this episode. Grab a pen, grab a piece of paper, be prepared to pause it and take some notes, because this is going to be an episode you are going to want to listen to multiple times. I remember when I first met you, you immediately, I barely knew you, and you were like, hey, what do you need? How's that going?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, do that. Don't talk to that person, actually do this instead. So, like, do you think that half of your success is actually due from just you being this connector and giver? Is that the secret sauce?
Trying to help other people achieve their goals and dreams. That's what I've kind of done since the beginning. And that's one of my gifts or talents. And so I try to lean into that and be a generous giver of my talent. Some people might have a lot of money. That's their talent. Okay, how can I give more of that thing? And that's just my gift. And there's really, I think there's 4 different ways of living life with or without money. And the first way, and I've lived all 4 of these. And the first way is what none of us want to live, which is being broke financially and broke emotionally. When I was 24, 25 on my sister's couch, I had no money, 3 credit cards I was living off of, student loan debt, and I wasn't generating any money. So I was financially broken and kind of like spiritually, emotionally broken as well, because my dream had been crushed from getting injured as an athlete. My identity was gone. I was living on my sister's couch. I was like, I'm a grown man, acting like a child, getting, taken care of by my sister.
You're too big for a couch, too.
Exactly. It was just like I was broken financially and emotionally, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do next. So I had no clear game plan. So it was just kind of wallowing in depression, victimhood, why me? No one wants to live that way. That's the first level. The second level is being financially broke still, but starting to feel more emotionally, spiritually abundant, free, excited. And I started to shift after about a year into thinking, okay, I need to get out of this rut. Let me find some coaches, some mentors. Let me start learning. Let me start overcoming fears. Let me start developing skills. And when I started getting momentum around that, it's like something unlocked inside of me where I had this passion, this drive, this excitement, this like, I can take on anything, this kind of fearlessness. And so I was starting to feel more rich inside, even though it wasn't paying off externally in the bank account yet. But eventually that momentum started to build into creating financial freedom. After a few years more after this, I remember I made my first $1 million. And it was like, wow, all this excitement, this hustle, this grind, like I was willing to work all day and night and do whatever it took and help as many people as possible. Say yes to every opportunity. I started generating money. And I was like, okay, now I'm making it. But a few years later, I was obsessive about making more and more. I was like, how do I grow? Every year's got to be bigger. Let's 10x every year. And there was a point after a few years where I lost the internal richness and I started to get more afraid, fearful. I started to feel like everyone was now trying to take advantage of me as opposed to we are working together. People were coming out of the woodwork from middle school who saw I had money and now asking me for money. So it didn't feel good after a while. And it didn't make me feel, it didn't solve all my emotional problems having money. So it was almost like a more challenging thing for me because I had this money. I thought it would make me happier, and it actually wasn't solving my emotional problems. So I felt more emotionally bankrupt, even though I had money financially. And that's a big challenge because you think, okay, let me go make more, build more, become bigger, better. And it's still not filling me up emotionally. That's a scary place to be. And so this is the third level. And I was living in LA here, 5 miles away in an apartment building during 2000, 2001, a really nice apartment building where there were a lot of billionaires, millionaires, celebrities, athletes, all that stuff. And I was driving back one day from a road trip, and there was a white tent in the parking lot in the valet. And I said to the valet attendant, I was like, someone didn't jump, did they? Kind of just joking. And he said, yes, someone just jumped like an hour ago and committed suicide from the building I was living in with all these billionaires and millionaires. And I was like, how could someone jump in this building? This is like the nicest building in LA. And I later found out who that person was, who was worth $500 million. A big movie producer, an executive. But for whatever reason, he wasn't feeling rich emotionally. He had all the money in the world, but something was off internally that caused him to not love himself, not accept where he was at in his life. And that, separation of having so much externally, but feeling broken internally can cause a lot of pain for people. Having money can solve money problems, but it can't solve self-worth problems necessarily.
Yep.
You can be a net worth millionaire, but be bankrupt, and not be a self-worth millionaire. And the goal is to go from level 0, level 1 to level 4, which is becoming financially free and also becoming emotionally free, spiritually free, rich abundantly internally, feeling peace. And most people are stressed with money right now. They're uncertain with the economy. They don't know where their money's coming from next month, if they're going to have a job or not, if their business is going to collapse or not. They don't understand. There's so much fear and anxiety. And so they're crippled by the fear internally. And when we can set ourselves free emotionally around money in general, we're going to be money's not going to have power over us, whether we're making more or making less. We're still going to feel good with us. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole reason I wanted to write this book.
So true, because increasingly I think peace is the new rich, and everyone has everything besides peace.
Yeah.
If you think about it in the U.S., there are certainly those of us who are still struggling with hunger, certainly those of us that are still in a place where we have massive scarcity. But like people dying of pure starvation in the U.S., not that common. Yeah. And so we have a lot, and yet we feel more anxious and like we have less than ever. Mm-hmm. And at first I thought you could just fix it by all of us making more money.
Exactly.
That was my tactic.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's just go. Let's teach more people how to make more money.
You can solve money problems.
You can, but you realize very quickly that, the guy at the top is oftentimes just as unhappy, or maybe more so, because he thought on the way up that he was chasing happiness.
Exactly. And I think we talked about this before. It's like, this is not like a judgment or anything here, but it's when is enough enough? And we can only strive for more and play the game of, I'm going to make $10 million, $100 million, $1 billion, cool, whatever. It's fun. But is it doing it because I don't feel enough?
Yeah.
Or because I don't feel peaceful and I need to make more? Or is it doing it because this is what I love and I want to make a big impact on the world, but I feel good with me whether I make it or I don't? And I think it's getting to that place of being driven by a vision so big or so exciting for you, but not because you need to validate your self-worth.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I think the love of the game is why a lot of us continue to do it, but it's brutal. I mean, what would you say to like a young man out there listening to this right now who kind of feels a little lost, destitute, not making money, maybe not even meeting other people, not in a relationship and married like you newly are, and isn't sure where to go next to get even to from level 1 to level 2, just to start making money? Like, what are the changes you made to do that? And what would a young, broke dude who got a chance to talk to Lewis, what would you tell him?
I'd probably say 3 things. The first 3 things that came into mind, I would get a physical practice first, like really master your body, because if you're not feeling confident within yourself, you haven't mastered a routine of rigor or discipline or consistency around some type of working out. And when you master your physical health, or at least you're on a journey of mastering it, doesn't mean you have to have a six pack or be shredded or anything like that. But if you have a consistent program with that, 30 to 60 minutes a day, you're going to feel more empowered because you're taking back responsibility of your own agency. Second thing I would say is find a spiritual mentor. When you're lost, you need a spiritual guide in your life. And if you aren't able to tap directly to God or your belief system of why I'm here, then lean on someone you admire. Find someone you admire. I don't care if it's a sports coach, a business leader who follows practices you admire, or a pastor or something like that. Find someone that you admire who is living a life of high values and integrity. Because ultimately, you want to be living that life. You don't want to be living out of integrity because it may be fun for a while, but you'll always hurt people along the way and ultimately hurt yourself along the way.
By the way, if you're building a business right now and you're stuck or you want to break out to the next level, maybe you're not where you want to be today. Believe me, I've been there many, many times. I want you to know I got you. We help thousands of business owners a year figure out how to scale to the next level. One of my favorite mentors said, every level you have, there's just a higher level and a higher devil. And so if you've been in business for a while and you're doing 6, 7, or 8 figures, there's probably one thing standing in the way of your next level. That's why we host growth and scale workshops 4 times a year throughout the year in Austin, in Miami, in San Diego, and you may be a fit to come to one of them. If it sounds interesting to you to get help on how to scale your business to the next level, you can reach out to my team at the link in the show notes. We believe in you builders, but we also believe that it's a lonely road and you can't do it by yourself.
And then the third thing I would say is to really study and learn about money and make money feel relaxing to you. Most people stress out about it. I stressed about it so much because I didn't understand it. And there's still levels that I don't understand today. It's not like I'm a money expert. I'm not an investing expert or budgeting expert. I've learned how to master these things, but it's more about learning how to have conversations around money where it's fun and you're not fearful around it. Because when you're fearful around something, that thing has power over you. Yep. It triggers you emotionally in your nervous system, and you're afraid to even just tell people your money situation. Most people talk about their sexual intimacy more than they'll talk about their money situation. And if you're willing to have conversations around money and just be more flexible and flowing around these conversations, make it more common, you're going to allow the flow for money to come to you. When we are in fear around something, why would we want that thing to come to us? If we're psychologically, emotionally afraid of it because we don't understand it, we're ultimately going to push it away. We're ultimately going to block the flow of abundance financially to us when we are in fear of that thing. It's an energy flow, and you have to be willing to receive money and be ready and prepared to receive more.
It's actually fascinating. I've never thought about that before, that people are more willing to talk about their sexual intimacy than money.
Yes.
It's actually really true. Some people are willing to talk about money, but only once you have a ton of it at the top. Mm-hmm. And then
people say they don't even reveal what their money or how much they spend.
True. It's like somewhere in the mid, there's some like amount of bravado, and then you like hit the real money amount. And you're like, oh, whoops, that's not cool anymore. I shouldn't talk about it. But that's fascinating. Like you've got, more power to however you want to talk about your sexual intimacy, but you've got entire podcasts like Call Her Daddy or whatever. It's really a lot about sex. And there's nobody coming on here talking about money except almost in a shame-based way. Like I like Caleb Hammer, but being like, this was dumb, this was dumb, this is dumb, this is dumb, as opposed to any sort of vulnerability around it. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I just think making it more of a common practice around, hey, this is where I'm at, this is where I'm trying to get to, and being open to having the conversations where it flows more easily.
And is it more like what would that look like in practice? Like Jesse Itzler, for instance, I remember him saying that he would go to the Beverly Wilshire and he would sit in the lunchroom and he would order like the cheapest thing that was on the menu. And the reason he would do it is because it would allow him to sit around all these really rich people. And then he would ask them, like, he would be like, hey, I don't have a lot of money yet. I'm on my way up. How did you get here? Like, what do you do for a living? And he credits that with his creation of NetJets.
100%. Yeah. And it's just having proximity to those conversations. And I think having them more frequently, even with the people in your life, even if people don't have money, just say, hey, let's talk about this. What are we working on today? What What are you struggling with? How much money do you have in debt? Like just talking about it, making it more commonplace. Because the more comfortable you are talking about something, I think the easier it is to go create that thing.
And I really like it because there's a lot of books today talking to us about why money's not important. You don't need money. Money doesn't matter. And I think that happens a lot during recessionary periods. Those books do really, really well. Why? Because you already don't have it. So if somebody can validate that you don't need it, you're like, that sounds good. I'm on board. Also, rich people suck, But,
Exactly.
But if you can write a book that is instead like, hey, you're not net worthed by your net worth.
Yeah.
That's not your self-worth. But you can be okay pursuing it, I think is really, really powerful.
100%. I think if you want to pursue more money, like pursue as much money as you want. It's where is that pursuit coming from? Is it from a need to prove people wrong? Is it coming from a need because you want to validate yourself that you're worthy or you're better than? You're always going to be creating from a sense of scarcity rather than abundance. And when you create from abundance, a emotionally rich place, money can come and go and it's not as stressful.
Yeah.
There was a company about 1.5 years ago. It was so funny because as I was doing the research for this book and I was writing this book, I hadn't finished it yet. And I was like, I'm still not ready to like finish this book. And for whatever reason, around this time, there was a company that essentially took $1 million from me and that didn't pay me. It was meant to pay me and it didn't pay me. And for weeks, I was like, when are they going to pay? What's going on? It feels like they were stealing from me, right? And I was kind of a mess. I was like, it's $1 million. It's not a small thing. And I felt more taken advantage of. It was more the act of abuse and taking advantage of. And I have stories of feeling taken advantage of as a kid and feeling abused, from sexual abuse to people stealing money from as a kid, all these different things, picked on. And I go, this is perfect timing, actually. After like 2 months of stressing about this, I was like, this is all happening for me because this situation triggered a wound inside of me of abuse, of being taken advantage of a not fairness, right? And it's the exact lesson I still haven't graduated yet. And so after 3 months of this, I finally was like, you know what? They may not pay. It doesn't mean I have to love it, but I get to learn that I'm not tied down by what this company does or doesn't do, that I have an abundant sense inside of me. I can go create this money as well. It doesn't mean I have to like this and be like, yay, this was fun. But right now, this has power over me. It's consuming me.
Yeah.
And I'm living in scarcity. That scarcity is holding me back from being creative, resourceful, and making better decisions. And so once I started doing some healing work around that, I released it and let it go, and I stopped worrying about it. They eventually paid me. And I was like, okay, great. But now this is a lesson, knowing that when I'm in scarcity or living in fear around something or frustration around something, it's not going to feel good. I'm not feeling abundant when I do this. Mm-hmm. So how can I shift the energy? It doesn't mean I still have to handle it and take action and do certain things, but how can I shift my energy to know I'm going to be resourceful in other ways and I'm going to be okay, whether this money comes or they take it from me. And I think that's been a big lesson for me, is learning how to feel peaceful no matter what. It doesn't mean there's not going to be challenge or adversity, but how can I not let something rob me of my peace?
Hard, but really important.
And again, I keep going back to these millionaires and billionaires who are just overly stressed, overly worked, that are on drugs, suicidal, or committing suicide. What's the point of having all the money if you don't love yourself, if you don't have peace? What's the point then? It doesn't feel like a rich life to me.
Yeah. It's interesting because the hard part, I think, is what is the healing practice to that, right? And in my case, I know when I have something that happens that I don't like. One thing happened this morning. It was literally like, you know what my panic words are, Louis? If you ever text me, hey, we need to talk, instant panic. I don't know I don't know who texted me that originally and something terrible happened.
It triggered some wound.
I just have I go, oh my God, they're leaving me. We're bankrupt. I don't know. Worst case scenario immediately. Oh, every time. And the only way that I found to get around that at like my level, not at the level I want to be at, is most people kind of hide from tough conversations. And I usually, when I get those, say, hey, Like,
Let's lean in.
Let's talk.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, pick up the phone. Let's have a conversation. What do you want to talk about? Or if somebody's like, can we talk, but later today or next week? No, let's do it right now. If you're important enough to like mention the talk, we probably should have the talk. So that kind of helps because usually it's never as bad as you think it is.
Yes.
And so you can clear it out. But what else do you do to get past this scarcity mindset? What are your practices?
You got to heal your money wounds. And it may sound a little woo-woo, it may sound a little weird, and people may not want to hear this. But we all have a money story.
Yep.
Based on how we grew up, whether it be our parents teaching us a certain way, either literally speaking a certain way or their energy. My parents fought all the time. It's my memory. I know it wasn't every day, but it felt like frequently. And when they weren't fighting, they weren't showing each other love. The only time they'd show each other love is after a fight, they'd kind of like hug or kiss barely and like try to mend it. But then it was just like a cycle my whole life. And a lot of this was around not having enough money. Stresses around money. So I, in my nervous system, didn't feel emotionally safe with money conversations. So I have these money wounds based on a money story. I also got into a season for about a year and a half where I would steal at grocery stores, like candy bars and stuff when I was like 10, 11. I had kids steal from me. And there's just kind of all these money wounds, these money memories that creates a money story inside of my mind and also my nervous system. You have money story. Your husband has his unique money story. And that creates our money style. How we spend, how we save, how we think about money, how we talk about money. It creates a money personality style that we are today. And until we heal our money wounds and take ourselves to money therapy, which sounds kind of weird, and mend those wounds, we'll continue to live in a certain personality style and create a strategy around money based on that energetic nervous system response. And that's going to create money, a career, a business from that energy until we shift it and heal it. And it doesn't mean it's good or bad, right or wrong. It just means that's how your personality style is. I know people that never look at their bank account. They just spend based on their money story and their style. I know other people that look obsessively daily and they save every penny because they're worried for whatever reason based on their money story and style. And here's an example I like to give people, and we'll do this with you. Imagine, Cody, that there was money was a person.
Okay.
The idea of money, the representation of all the money in the world was in one person. And that person walked through the door right now and stood right here. What would your initial thought, feeling, or response be if money walked in and stood right in front of you?
Be stoked.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm picturing Elon Musk because I think most of the money does live there. Yeah. I think I'd be like, sweet. I get to like, what's the deal? I want to know what's going on over there.
Okay. Cool.
I think that's my reaction.
You'd be excited. You'd be stoked. You'd be curious.
Yeah.
You'd be open-minded, right?
Yeah.
I've asked this to so many different people. I asked this on Mark Manson's podcast. And you know Mark Manson, the solar. Yeah. And I go, money walks in the door. What's your first response? He goes, that guy's a douchebag. I was like, really? I go, tell me why. That's his initial response based on his whole life history and a money story. And this guy's a multi-millionaire and makes tons of money with his books and show and everything. But he goes, yeah, he's kind of a stuck-up douchebag. And I don't know if I'd really want him here. And I go, okay, just notice your response. I asked someone in their late 20s, you're at a restaurant, money walks in the door. What do you do? And they said, I would get out of my seat and go to the bar and hide. Then I would start gossiping about money behind its back like it's in the room. Then if it came up to me, I would act like I was its friend. Then I would use and abuse it when I needed money, and I would ghost it if it ever reached out to me. And I was like, that's a very descriptive response and seems very unhealthy. And they were like, yeah, it is. And that's how it shows up in their life, based on their money story and based on their money personality style. That's how money shows up for them. And it doesn't make it right or wrong, good or bad, but is that relationship with money supporting you? With you, it sounds like, man, I'd be stoked if money walked in right here. I'd be like, hey, what's up? How you doing? Let's be friends. That's what it sounds like for you.
Yeah.
You'd be more like free, flowing, open. You know, I talked to someone else and they said, if money walked in the room, I'd give it a big hug and say, come, sit down, let's chat. It's just like, it doesn't make it good or bad, right or wrong. It's just, Is your relationship supporting you in your daily actions around money, in your career, in your business, how you make decisions based on your relationship with it? And when people can start to reflect, I give a ton of exercises in the book on reflecting on your money story to see why you have this money personality style now and to see what your personal relationship with money is, just to assess and see, is this serving me in my life? Is it bringing me more joy or more pain? Yeah. And that's it. This is not about how to be a mega millionaire or billionaire, because that's the key to life. Yeah. This is about, can you live a rich, abundant life inside of you? When you do, it really doesn't matter how much money you do or don't have. It doesn't matter if you have $1 million or 20 million. It's like you feel good with you no matter what externally is happening. Then the money is just an additional bonus. It's like, wow, I can do cool things with this. I can help more people. I can give more. I can buy a home. I can do stuff. But you're not living your life based on external validation. It's about internal feelings.
I love doing stuff. I think actually, you know what would be really cool? I would be so curious what would happen, Louis, if you're listening right now. I want you to play a little game with us, and we'll see if anybody will do it.
Yeah.
I want you to tag us in an Instagram story where you describe what your money style is.
Yes.
And what your money story is live. Like, I want to know what the story, and just tag Louis and I. Mm-hmm. I'm so curious to hear what people's immediate reaction is when they see money walk in the door.
That's it. Yeah. And your money story and your money style equals your strategy, how you show up with money in your life today.
Okay, wait. So I want to back up. So first you've got your money story, which is like, if money walked in the door, how would you react?
Well, your money story is more of like all of the memories and wounds that you have around money. It could be good things. It could be negative things that you remember growing up. That is like, when I grew up, my dad and mom said, like, money doesn't grow on trees. Yeah. And they were stingy and they didn't give me an allowance and I had to work hard for my money and it was all about hard work or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Or it could have been like, man, my parents taught me that money comes freely to me when you add value.
Yeah.
And so I learned how to just be a value-driven individual. And I learned that money flows abundantly and it doesn't like consume me. You know, whatever your personality or your story is around money.
And you write down.
You write those down. What are those memories? What are those memories that you can think of? What are the painful ones, the good ones? Mix it all together. Okay. That's your story. Write those down. Then think about your money personality style. How do you spend money? How do you save money? Do you invest your money or do you just put it in a savings account? Do you not know what your money is because you got so much debt that you're afraid and ashamed to look at it? You know, a lot of people are just like, when I had credit card debt, I didn't want to look at it. Yeah. So I was like ashamed of it. I was like, I just want this to go away. And so I had to really start taking a look at things differently and say, oh, why am I avoiding money? Why am I avoidant of this? I was afraid of it. So I was strategically doing things in life based on my style and my story. And this whole, if money was a person and it walked in the room, that's more just to see what your relationship with money is. If it was a person, because I believe money is it's an intimate emotional thing. Most people have an emotional reaction with money. And emotions come from human beings. And so if you have an emotional reaction to something, imagine if it was a person. When you receive money, are you grateful and appreciative of the money you receive? Or are you like, gosh, stressed out, anxious, and just like frustrated with it? Mm-hmm. And imagine if you were always frustrated with a person in your life, how do you think they would feel? They wouldn't enjoy it. Imagine if you were never appreciative of them. You would never express gratitude towards them, especially an intimate partner. They'd probably leave you after a period of time. Or the relationship would not work. And if you thought of money when it came and when it left as an intimate relationship, and you said, it's weird as it may sound, money comes to me, and if you said, thank you so much for being with me, where would you like to go? What do you want to do? It's weird thinking of it as a person.
I'm kind of into it.
If you're $1, $100,000, $1 million comes in your bank account, and you just say, thank you, money, for being here, where do you want to go? Do you want me to give you away today? Do you want me to use part of you to buy something for myself? Do you want me to invest in you and put you in somewhere? Do you want to go into the stock market? Do you want me to put you in real estate? Should I hire someone and help them in their life and their dreams with your money today? Where do you want to go? and almost asking it, role playing. As weird as this sounds, I feel like you'll have a better relationship with money when you invest and appreciate the money that comes to you.
You know what's weird is it is woo-woo, but I think that if you don't do things like this, you can have all the tactics in the world and you will still be broke. And, you know, what's fascinating, how did you come up with this?
Studying, asking, 12 years of research, asking all the wealthy people in the world that I knew.
And all your notebooks while
and
you read
all the
podcast.
therapists that I've interviewed and all the healing work I've done on intimacy and relationships. And I realized from some of my biggest episodes around money, and I just would ask people, what's your biggest challenge with money? What's your biggest fear? What's holding you back? What's blocking you? What's your limiting beliefs? And it always came back to this relationship with money. And I know this because I had a bad relationship with it for a long time. And it took years to kind of heal and learn these things and figure out, how can I feel emotionally free with money? Because I don't want money to have power over me.
Yeah.
And even a year and a half ago, I thought I was free with money, and something triggered me. Something hit the emotional, psychological wound of stealing my money. And it made me furious. And I realized it still has power over me.
Yeah.
I'm still not free with money emotionally. And this relationship that of me and money is not good still. Maybe in certain areas, but not every area. And I'm sure there's more levels for this. It's not like I've mastered this. This is about me exploring how to set myself emotionally free and have tools that if I ever go back into pain, how do I create freedom quicker?
That's so good.
And again, I just know so many people that I'd ask questions to about what are their struggles around money? What are their fears, their concerns, their insecurities? People are living in fear around money. And that fear is blocking their abundance. It's blocking their ability to earn more and feel free with the money they're earning.
Yeah, and even to learn about how to make money. Because I think a lot of the reasons I go straight to tactics, because apparently I'm buddies with money. I don't know why, but I like it.
You walked in, you're like, hey, let's hang out.
Sup, what you got? But that's why I want to go to tactics immediately, because I'm like, oh, tell me. But
most people can't even go there because they don't have a relationship with it.
They cannot.
Toxic. Their whole relationship is broken.
100%.
So how are you going to do tactics if you can't even be in a room with money?
Yeah, 100%.
If you got an intimate partner in front of you and you don't feel emotionally safe to have an open, vulnerable conversation as a tactic, you've got to do the healing work on you first before you can actually look someone in the eyes and say, hey, you hurt me. Hey, this upset me. I want to talk about it calmly, consciously. Instead of, you hurt me. It's like when you are so reactive or fearful and wounded, you respond based out of a wound, not out of wisdom, not out of like conscious communication, not out of clarity. It doesn't mean everything's going to be comfortable in your life. These are about, you're going to have uncomfortable conversations. But how can you have those uncomfortable conversations like you do from a place of, when someone says that we need to talk, you try to lean into it right away. It doesn't mean it's easy, but you consciously lean in and say, what can we do to make this better?
100%.
You don't avoid it.
No.
You don't run from it. You do the uncomfortable thing, but you try to mend it faster.
Yeah. But it's a great point, because you know what would be sweet? I don't know. You don't have this in the book, I don't think, but like, I would love a quiz on personality types with money.
Oh, I've got a whole chapter with a quiz.
No, but you don't have where you can go and click and say you're
quiz.
this on your website?
Yes.
What's the website?
Well, I mean, it's in the book and I've got the code in here. I have to find the actual link
so you
for
gotta,
you.
you
MakeMoneyEasyBook.com
Okay, perfect.
is the website, but there's a whole
So you
chapter
buy the book.
with a quiz you can take here.
And is there
and
an
it tells you your
avatar?
personality style. Yes.
Okay, so what are you?
Well, I'll tell you this right now. Let me find this page so I can tell the exact process of
Tell me
this.
when you're ready, and I'll tell a story in the meantime. So I remember I was speaking at a women's event.
Yes.
And it was a finance women's event with a bunch of like kind of pretty wealthy women, all in leadership roles. And this is when I realized that a book like yours was really needed, but I had no answers to this question then.
Yep.
I was going to go on and speak about how to do asset investing at like a high level, alternative investing, blah, blah, blah. But first they had this woo-woo chick in Austin come on and talk about—
Who was it? Do you remember?
I don't. I remember a lot of feathers and like there
hat,
were
big hat.
beads. There was a
Yeah.
hat, and I was judgy. I was immediately judgy.
Yes.
And yet this woman came on and she blew my mind. She had us all close our eyes, She said, in the audience, everybody close your eyes. And I want you to visualize money. And I want your body to become a visual representation of your feeling of money.
I love it.
And so immediately,
Very woo.
Yeah, very woo. And I'm like opening one eye slightly, but my hands like went up. I was like, money, I want it. I like it. And I kind of thought that would be everybody. And she said, now freeze, keep your eyes closed. Now open your eyes. And she had us look around.
And how many people had their hands up?
Oh, maybe like me and one other chick.
Wow.
And almost everybody else was, some of them might have been like this or like this or like this. And that's when I realized, whoa, in this area, I'm messed up in many, many, many areas. But in this one, this is such a wound for people. And if we don't heal the wound, then we definitely cannot apply, a new foundation. We can't apply growth. We can't extend.
Exactly. It's got to heal the wound. And you were like free. You were like, I'm ready,
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I still freak out about money sometimes.
But most people are blocked. You have a different thing, you know.
Which is I want too much of it. This is what you did to me on your podcast.
You have a different thing where it's like, I was like, what's enough? And you're like, I don't know. Like, you're like, there is not enough. You're like, I need it all. And it's not a right or wrong, good or bad conversation, but it's just why?
Yeah.
It doesn't make it wrong. Where is that coming from? That's it. And then you held back the tears. You're like, I'm not going to talk about this. I'm going to close down right now. I was like, okay, cool.
You did. You're like, what would it look like if you were enough? And I was like, shut up, Lewis.
Like, next topic.
Yeah, stop trying to make me emotional.
And it doesn't mean you don't have to like reach your ultimate potential and go for what you want to go for. I'm not saying that, but where is it coming from? And I don't know if you've reflected on that at all, but it's like, I think your money, I can't remember what was enough for you. You're like, I want 100 million. No, I want $1 billion or something. I was like,
just kept going bigger.
Why? And is your number still $1 billion or is it bigger now?
Well, I think some of the stuff that's helped me lately, we've talked about this, is that I want a family and I want.
Yeah, it's hard to.
Yeah. And I have to make space for that. And there's got to be another priority.
Trad wife.
Yeah, I want to be a trad wife.
Trad wife.
You know this.
Hashtag trad wife life.
Oh my God, I want to be in sundresses, just prancing around like a happy little mother.
Cabin, with the little.
That's why I judged the chick. I wanted the hat and the beads. Full circle, probably.
You wanted to feel emotionally free.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's hard to be going for $1 billion business brand and be in your heart all day.
Yeah.
And be like emotionally open and have flexibility and space for like chaos with kids running around and just being open to like cleaning diapers and like feeding and just listening to your kids like gobbledygook or whatever when they're kids. Yeah. Like you have to create that emotional space, that emotional freedom in order to be present. And if you're always in your head of like, we got to grow and build, you don't have space for that.
Yeah. And
it's not a good or bad, right or wrong thing. It's like, what do you want? What's your vision?
Yeah, and what's your season?
And $1 billion, what is that going to do for you? Mm-hmm. I mean, buy you more planes than $100 million? Like, I don't know.
Probably
like, cool.
Not a big difference between.
And then what? You're going to give a lot of it away or buy more sports teams or invest in cool stuff. But it's like, for what? To manage more problems?
Yep, that's very true.
And at the end of the day, what is it that you want to feel? What is $1 billion going to make you feel when you hit that?
Higher level, higher devils.
And so for me, it's like what I'm hearing your heart say, and maybe it's the season of life or I don't know, clock ticking or whatever it might be, or you just feel like, okay, I also want this, that there's some richness and joy to that as well. That's probably more than $1 billion will ever give you.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely felt it more. I mean, for young people that really want money, I love it. It was really hard to find someone who didn't leave their hometown but was successful.
Every time I'm away from the people I'm comfortable in, it allows me to question what I thought I believed.
Just because it's a land you left doesn't mean it's a land you don't love.
And I remember just getting in the car, about to cry, and my wife was like, "It's okay." I was like, "No, it's not. This was everything."
In order to be successful, you need to leave at some point, and yet so many people don't leave.
I wipe my tears with like $100 bills. No, I'm just kidding.
Welcome back. It's Codie Sanchez, and this is the Big Deal podcast for those who don't just want to get rich, but be free and actually do what it takes to get there. So today, we're answering this question. Do you actually have to leave your hometown to become successful? Can you make it where you were born? Or do you have to go somewhere different to grow than the place that you were first made? Lots of people have different takes on this, and we're going to tell you what you need to do if you're going to have to leave. How do you make a successful network somewhere else? And we're going to bring in my rich and successful friends to tell you both sides of their stories. First, I started with this tweet quite a while ago, and it went something like this. Never be afraid to leave your hometown to grow. It's too easy to stay the same when the scene does. Your people love you as you are now, and they'll fear losing that you. Your hometown, it'll be there. But if you truly want to change, you need to go to a place that has changed. And I kind of believed that. But then I tried something else.
You did. Like right before we hopped on this recording, you tweeted, do you know anyone who is really successful, lives in their hometown, and has never left to work anywhere else? My favorite tweet was, Jesus couldn't even preach in Nazareth. Jesus was from Nazareth.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's so good.
I was like, oh my gosh, that one's good. And then another person made a great comment. Yep, it helps to be a Silicon Valley local. I feel like the same thing probably about like New York City. And then another person, no, staying in your hometown will rust you as a ship that doesn't do what it's built for.
Oh, so got poets in the audience.
I know. Still, Nazareth is up there as my number one. But personally, I would love a hometown. I moved a lot growing up, so I'd love to hear more about what you actually mean first by like success.
Yeah, so let's narrow the scope because that's what a bunch of people commented. Let's define success as money and earnings. And let's be really specific. Top 1% earners, which is somewhere around $823,000 a year. Can you be a top 1% earner and stay in your hometown? And what are the examples of humans who have actually done that? I think having a really specific goal helps you figure out how to get a really specific answer. So we did a bunch of homework on this, right? And we found some fascinating research on the one key determinant that will decide for most young people if they're going to be successful or not. And it's fascinating. It's two words. It's called economic interconnectedness or economic connectedness. And basically what happened is there was a research study done on thousands of kids in neighborhoods that had the same socioeconomic demographics, aka like child A had kind of a same economic background as child B. One child was in Minneapolis, relatively poor, same sort of situation as this other group that was in another city that wasn't Minneapolis. So same low income children, two different cities. And what was really interesting is the kid who was in Minneapolis, which is an economically connected city, which means people from high incomes, people from low incomes hang out together. They have interactions together. That kid had a 33% higher income by the time that kid was 35 than the kid who came from the same economic family, but because the city wasn't economically interconnected, that kid earns 33% less over time. So what does that kind of mean wrapped with a bow on it? That being around rich people seems to help you become more rich. And I'm just using that one example of that kid from Minneapolis, but there's, thousands that were done in this study so that they found it statistically significant, aka it actually has a strong predictor for most children. And in fact, they said that is the strongest predictor of upward mobility found to date. Now, they don't say why, but it seems to me like if you're around other rich people, perhaps you can be what you can see and you cannot be what you cannot see. And then we're like, all right, is this just one study? Because those can be flawed. So we went to another study called Public Source, and they basically say the same thing a different way, which is the neighborhood or environment where you grow up is really going to affect your earnings potentials by and large without any other indicators in there. Then in Pittsburgh, adults born in Point Breeze, just one city, averaged $70,000 in salary and 78% had a job, as compared to Shadyside, which is another segment of Pittsburgh, which had an average income of $22K and an employment rate of $76K, which basically means if you are born in a low income neighborhood, which we already kind of know, that then you are more likely to stay in said low income neighborhood if your geography doesn't change. Remember when you guys were in high school and we had those Petri dishes and we would like put little different things inside the Petri dish and then they would grow depending on what different things were inserted into the Petri dish? And at some point, you'd insert one little piece of bacteria into a Petri dish and all of a sudden mold would grow like crazy. You'd insert something else and there'd be crystals inside of your Petri dish. Now you start with the same Petri dish and you start with the same base, but depending on what you add, something different grows. And I think that's what this study is telling you, that if you do not add different things and you stay in the same place, you largely will stay the same as everybody else. And then there's this other study that talks about the zone of proximal development, which basically is this concept that a learner has one ability without help and another ability with help if it comes from a more knowledgeable person, which is like, yeah, Cody. But basically what this means is mentorship and being what you can see is a real thing. We can actually statistically say that if you are around more people that have XYZ, you are more likely to have XYZ, that thing that you are trying to achieve. Paul Graham had a really interesting sort of series of articles that we wrote on. And if you don't know Paul, he was an early investor in a ton of stuff, Stripe, Airbnb, Amazon, Dropbox. He says, roots grow where planted. Your environment shapes your ambitions. And then he says, great cities attract ambitious people. So if you want to create, maybe you go to Austin. Those are my words. If you want to make money, you go to New York or where Rachel is. If you want to be innovative, you go to Silicon Valley. If you want to raise venture, you go to Silicon Valley. And so what if the reason you don't achieve what you want to achieve is because your surroundings do not allow you to insert different things into your petri dish? That's my sort of belief. Now, you had some interesting stuff, I think, from Scott Galloway.
Yes. So I know not a lot of people. I know, actually, I'm not sure. It seems like on my part of the internet, Scott Galloway gets a lot of flack. For those of you who don't know, he's made some pretty high profile predictions in the business world. He made his money by knowing people, investing in their companies and advising them.
He made a bunch of money.
Yes. And he had a really good quote.
What does he think? Okay.
So about outside of this is outside of making money, but I was really interested about like his thoughts on how young people should operate. Basically, he said, you should never be at home. That's what I always tell young people. Home is for 7 hours of sleep and that's it. You need to get out of the house. So yeah, basically spending home time, which I really, really like, is inversely correlated with professional and romantic success in his mind. This is obviously controversial for some people because people think that like economic constraints, high housing costs, and remote work make staying at home just a more practical choice. So yeah, if you don't want to like leave the house and spend like $8 on a latte and your other options like stay home and make your coffee and watch a movie, that might be more enjoyable for some people than going out and about.
Dude, I think we got to start like also separating what's enjoyable from what will actually get you to your goals faster. And so I think I'm with him. I mean, I remember like my first studio that like was a little shithole, smelled awful, was on like the 31st floor in Chicago when I was working at Goldman. And yeah, like it wasn't a very nice place. It was cheap. It was what I could afford at the time before that salary kicked in. The truth of it is you're definitely not going to have success when you're young, don't know anybody and stay home all the time. Like, isn't that bizarre that is even controversial to say? Yeah. Like, how are you just going to get handed opportunities if you're hanging out in the house all day when you don't already have a network built in? I think he's just being honest. Now, like, I think virtue signalers on the internet they want to say all the reasons why you can't be successful because of the things that have happened to you in life. And I just think that's your hero story. The more difficulty you've had, the more incredible the comeback story is once you overcome it. And so
I want to ask you a question on that though. So now, like when Scott Galloway was younger, I'm sure there weren't as many people connecting and like making their networking moves on the internet, right? And now people are, and that can be done in the house. I feel like some people took his thoughts like to the extreme, like you shouldn't try to make your home like a nice place to live as a young person, like just live in a shoebox and leave. And I'm not sure if that's necessarily what he meant, but like I surely like living in a place that isn't just like a den. Like I did when I first lived in New York. I lived with 2 guys and it was a really apartment. But I moved and now I definitely spend more time at home. And I think one thing that allows me to do that is like the ability to network online. I'm not spending all my time at home, but what do you think now about like the changing landscape of networking?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I'm on the internet all the time, right? I have a lot of resources. I've been pretty lucky in that way as my career has progressed. But when I moved to Austin, it was very thoughtful. I moved to Austin because we were growing a media company. I didn't know anything about media companies. I've been in finance for a long time. I knew about how to buy businesses, but I didn't know anything about how to grow online. So what did I do? I certainly started networking online with other people, but then I became really good friends with like Noah Kagan and Sam Parr and all of these people here locally who are building or had already built media companies. And so I think it's really hard to beat the connection that is looking another human in the eye, shaking their hand, and realizing that you are real in some way, shape, or form. So there's probably a mix between the two. I wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to meet them in person if I hadn't been doing stuff online. So that's your 2.0 version, right? I mean, I do think one generation's like you have to pick up the phone and call people, or you have to shake their hands in person. And our generation is a mixture of the two. For instance, we hadn't met before this, but we've been working together for a while. But the connection that we're going to have because of you coming here and doing this is going to trump anybody else that you work with in podcasting that you haven't met in person.
Totally.
Because humans are just built that way. But I do think you're right that now more than ever, you can network online.
That's just devil's advocate too. I like vibing in person with people. That's like the whole reason. I live in New York. Like I technically could live anywhere.
Yeah.
But the excuse to live in New York is just too high with that many people around you.
Yeah. But I do think, give yourself an option of living somewhere that can feel nice, but can also feel tough.
Yeah.
All of us millennials, we love a little overpriced houseplant, but I do think that ability to be in a place that isn't so great and it pushes you out the door to go do things that make you slightly uncomfortable is something that you won't have to do later in life if you're successful. But doing it when you're young and resilient is really, really powerful. I want to get into the deal of the week.
Yes. So the deal of the week is so cool in my opinion.
All right. What is this?
So I keep talking about New York. Again, one of the reasons why I live there is I'm a horrible driver. I don't know who let me have my license. I'm just going to eat it at this point. Everyone makes fun of me. Love living in a walkable area. And 52% of Americans actually say they want to live in a walkable neighborhood, but only 8% do. And that is where Cul-de-sac comes in. So if you're interested in being car-free, but don't want to live in a major city, you should check them out. Back in 2022, they raised a $30 million Series A, led by Colsa Ventures with Founders Fund, LenX, Buyers Capital, Zig Capital, and Initialized Capital Investing as well. And the cool thing about them is they're building these like car-free neighborhoods. The first one popped up in Tempe, Arizona. So that's a suburb, right? Outside of Phoenix.
That's right.
And this place, it looks sick, to be honest with you. So there's like little areas you can hang out in. The apartments look pretty nice. They're not that expensive. Rent is around $1,400 to $3,000. And according to Apartment Advisor, the average rent in Phoenix, which is the closest city, like I said, was $1,500 in March 2022, with the average rent for a studio being $1,200 and all the way up to a 3-bedroom being just under $3,000. So, like I said, this isn't crazy. This place looks pretty cool. You get a free bike if you go, discounted rides on ride sharing apps and things like that. What are your thoughts on this?
It's wild. First of all, I hate the idea of venture capitalists planning and buying my neighborhoods. Have you met those guys?
Have you heard of Blank Street? Blank Street.
No.
Oh my, I'm the biggest hater. Only viral tweet I ever had was about, I said, if I hated somebody, I would bring them to Blank Street. If Blank Street's listening to this, your coffee is so bad. It is but yeah, no, I'm with you. So
yeah, I don't know. I don't love this idea. These are obviously geniuses. Founders Fund is an incredible fund. So is Khosla. But $200 million project that is basically a glorified strip center residential unit. And the only difference is that there aren't cars. I don't know. Also, why are you picking Tempe, Arizona? All my Arizonans out there, it's fucking 400 degrees in this place. Could you imagine? 1, you can't leave because you can't drive off. 2, it's 400 degrees. So like walking around outside is not really the deal either. The other part that I don't love about this is, I was like kind of talking with you about who's there. And so they gave a little rundown of some examples. If I can't leave because it's car free, and so maybe your cars are parked in a parking lot outside or something, I want to make sure the other residents are like hot, smart, successful, fun. And I'm not sure that I want venture capitalists picking other people in my neighborhood. So mine is like an immediate haterade over here. But I get the idea. I think we humans, we want to do this. We want to recreate like small town Main Street America, but 21st century version. And so I get this feeling of nostalgia and going home, which is what I think they're going for. And, if you think about it in the future, cars take up so much space. Our neighborhoods are planned around cars, which doesn't make a ton of sense long term. If we can rent cars and share them or whatever, that's probably just going to be the next generation. Because I kind of like my own car. I'm not a New Yorker. I want to park in a garage. So we'll see. Maybe your generation will be the one to do this.
Well, what I was kind of surprised about, and I know you're on the hating VC train right now, but I'm surprised Primetime Ventures, I think Primetime Partners actually is the name of it. They're a fund. I believe they just invest into aging communities, right? Or aging startups. This would have been a sick place to have for early retirement. So we know people are living longer, right? But that retirement age, you still see a lot of people retiring around there. But they're not necessarily like what you'd imagine would be in a retirement community. I think this would be a cool place to go if you're in that like middle space of retirement, right? So you're not like needing assistance, but like your kids and your grandkids would be like, Dad, you probably shouldn't have your driver's license. Like you probably shouldn't be on the road. You know, you're losing it a little bit here with the driving skills, but like you still have like your great health because science has pushed us like forward so much. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like this is a retirement home. I feel like this is what venture has done since, you know, the last bull run of 2009 in venture is they've been like, the thing is, we're reimagining the way that we live. And what they're doing in actuality is retirement home, but for young people, but it's the same thing, but let's raise $200 million for a glorified apartment complex. I don't know. So I'm a no.
Oh my gosh, you know what they need to do? Netflix needs to hit me up. You guys should do a dating show. You're saying all the hot and, you know, smart people there.
Yeah.
A dating show just filmed there. So it's all the residents or have to be a part of it. So it's like Truman Show style.
Like MTV Cribs, dating show.
Exactly.
Backed by venture.
Oh my gosh. MTV Cribs, so they can be like showing off like what they did with the space. I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty good marketing. All right. So maybe there's a way to make money on this idea of never leaving your hometown, never leaving your house. I guess too soon to tell. We'll see what happens with this community. I wouldn't bet against those guys. They're much smarter than I am at those firms, but probably wouldn't be something I'd put my own money in. So Steal My Rich Friends is where we're going to go next. And as a reminder, we think that the biggest secret to life isn't a hack. It's usually a person. And I didn't have a rich dad. And so I didn't get somebody to mentor me like that early on. And now I have a lot of rich friends and I think we should steal their homework. So that's what we do in this segment. This one was kind of wild because it was really hard to find someone who didn't leave their hometown but was successful. So we literally scoured the internet. I texted a bunch of friends. You know, my father, who's successful, he left for years and then he came back to his hometown for decades. My friend Rob, who you're going to hear about next, he left his hometown of Houston, went to LA, then went back. My friend Nick Huber, who you guys might know on the internet, Sweaty Startup, he lived in a small town in Indianapolis, but then he went to school at Cornell. Then he worked some other places. Then he went to a smaller town, but he didn't stay in one. So the moral of the story, we literally couldn't find humans who didn't come from either generational wealth and thus could stay locally and build on it, or weren't in like India, who started something in a small town and grew like crazy. And that's probably just due to massive demographic shifts and a huge population explosion paired with very few services located locally. Now, this is totally possible to just be a component of bias because we all left and now we know a lot of people who are nomadic. But I think it's worth asking yourself a question of, if the data by and large says that in order to be successful, you need to leave at some point, even if you come back, why fight the trend? And yet so many people don't leave.
Bring the band in. Let's go.
All right, we've got Rob Abasolo on. I'm super excited to have you here. If you guys don't know Rob, he's a stud. He basically came from W-2 in the creative world to building a backyard house, tiny home, to then building a ton of tiny homes, normal sized homes, and becoming a tiny home plus Airbnb sort of expert, then a huge YouTube channel. And now you take investment and you have all these Airbnbs. And what I thought was interesting and why I wanted to have you is you have a non-traditional path. You've had a ton of success. And I texted you and I was like, what do you think? Do you have to leave your hometown to grow or not? And you were like, well, I did. So let's talk about it. All right. The part I think is interesting is that you were born in Houston, you left Houston, and then you came back to Houston. We want to know, do you have to leave your hometown to grow? What's your 2 cents?
You don't have to leave, but I do think it behooves anyone that wants to experience something different to leave. I mean, honestly, I think the problem with staying in your hometown is that you stay around the set of beliefs that you grew up in. So the things that your parents told you to believe in, the things that your friends peer pressured you into believing, things that you thought you believed, you'll never question that until you are out of that environment. And for me, I think I grew up a very specific way. And then I went to college and I was like, oh, and I didn't have the comfort of I didn't have the fear of changing my beliefs over my back because my parents were 2.5 hours away. And then I moved to Kansas City after that. Then I moved to Los Angeles. Then I moved to Tennessee. Then I moved back to Los Angeles, now to Houston. I've moved everywhere. So I feel like every single time I've moved, I've just changed my beliefs because every time I'm away from the people I'm comfortable in, it allows me to question what I thought I believed. And I think that's super important for anyone wanting to grow.
How were you raised?
I was raised for the most part, Christian, somewhat religious. My mom made us go. And then that kind of wasn't super forced on us. And then going into middle school and in high school, I got really close to some friends, and they were super involved in their religion and into church. And so was I. And that was my identity for a long time. And then when I went to college, I had new friends, and I was like, it's interesting being around other people that think the opposite of me.
Yeah. And so what gave you the courage to actually leave first for college? Was that hard for you at all? I know, like, my parents, you're Latino, I'm Latino. My parents did not want me to leave. In fact, I didn't leave because I thought I should stay close by. Was that at all the same?
It was tough because my parents are immigrants and they came to America to give us a better life. And they did, right? Like I was born here. I had an amazing life from my perspective, right? And so it was really perplexing to my parents, the thought that I wanted to go to like the University of Texas in Austin, when for them coming to America, anything in America is great. And so my dad, I remember him being like, well, son, I know you want that, but the University of Houston is like 20 minutes from our house. I just can't fathom why you needed another school other than that. It's an American university. And so it was really tough because I love my family. We're all very close. It wasn't something that I necessarily wanted. I wasn't like, I got to get out of this place. But the idea of just something new and scary was just, I don't know why it was appealing to me, but I felt like I had to do it.
Do you think that people should push themselves to do that same thing?
Absolutely. Yeah. Anytime I move to a new city, I try to convince a friend from a different city to move with me. I'm like, you have to do it. Especially friends that have never moved before. Because I'm like, dude, you're a great person. I'd love to see how you could possibly change in the best way possible. And so I've gotten, at this point, probably 2 or 3 friends to completely uproot their lives. They've gotten married, they bought houses, they live these lives that they never would have possibly had if they stayed in their house. And it's just like a really interesting butterfly effect that happens. I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. I'm really interested in the butterfly effect of what happens whenever you just do something that's like so outside of the timeline that you were destined for. So I don't mean to sound profound, but it is one of those things where I was reflecting the other day. I did not get my dream job at Red Bull when I was 21 years old. It was 4,000 applicants. It was down to me and some other guy, and I didn't get the job. And I remember just getting in the car and like about to cry. And my wife was like, "It's okay." Like, I was like, "No, it's not. Like, this was everything." And it's like crazy. I would have moved to LA. I never would have had the kids that I had. I would never have gotten the jobs that I gotten. I never would have gotten the friends that I've gotten. And it's like, it's all because things sort of work out when you just go out there and do something crazy, I think.
Yeah. I mean, we should look up what like the top employees paid at Red Bull, because if you look at, let's just say monetary success, if that was your metric, you now make millions of dollars a year.
Yep.
You have tens and tens of millions of dollars in investment assets. You have probably million cumulative online followers. You probably get millions of views a year, probably tens of millions of views a year across multiple platforms. And
keep going.
Yeah. What else? You have a great hairline.
Thank you.
And if you had stayed at Red Bull, you were probably capped at like max. I bet the CEO of Red Bull maybe makes a couple $1 million, but nobody else at that company is making more than 500K. And so it's like, if you had never moved, and we just showed the Rob graph in Houston at the expected job versus what you've done today, the two graphs would be incredibly different.
Yeah, that's what I told my wife. I was working out this was 2 nights ago, big revelation, funny enough. And I was like, if I had gotten that job and I was in this job now 12 years or something, I'd probably be making 200 or 300K a year. And you'd be making we'd be living a really comfortable life in LA. But that's it. Like, it would be nothing near what we have today.
Yeah. And I think it all, it's interesting. Maybe risk compounds. You start out taking the small risk of going to a new college, and then you take a bigger risk of going and getting a job in a different city. And then you take a bigger risk of more responsibility until finally you take a risk of yourself on a business, and then you start investing in assets. And the more risk you take, if you're intelligent and you learn from it, the more it compounds into success. At least that's what it looks like. It's done.
That's exactly what it is. I always tell people getting into real estate, scale accordingly. So when you're going to get into your first property, you're not going to buy a $3 million house. You're going to buy probably a $200,000 house. After that, you buy a $400,000, then an $800,000, then a 1.2. And so when you get to that final one, everyone in your sphere, everyone in your influence thinks you're absolutely crazy because they think it's the riskiest thing ever. But to you, it's not all that risky because you've leveled up so many times along the way.
Yeah. The other thing I was curious about, and I tried to go back and think about it for me, but you've now moved a few times quickly. And one of the reasons people don't move in any aspect of their lives, why they are static and thus start to atrophy, is because it's scary, the future, seeing the unknown. And I think a lot of it is like, well, man, if I move to LA, how am I going to have new friends? If I move to LA, how am I going to have new opportunities? But I actually think there might be the opposite of that. If you stay, breaking the cycle that you already have where you are is actually quite hard. It's like living inside of an ice cream shop and all of a sudden really realizing you're lactose intolerant and you don't want to eat sweets anymore. Yeah. Hard. But if you just left the ice cream shop and you only went and worked at Whole Foods all day, it's probably much easier to break the cycle because you have a lot of other options. But what did you do, or what do you do when you go into a new city so that you can immediately accelerate both success, community, opportunity? Any lessons there?
I really try to plug into extracurricular groups outside of work. I think you can find friends within work. I mean, one of the things I found out very quickly is everyone just seems to think you're crazy when you're not doing something that's like conforms to the world, right? So like when I got into Airbnb, all my coworkers were like, dude, you're buying a house. Like you're living in LA. We can't even afford our rent here. How are you buying a house, or how are you getting into Airbnb? And so I naturally found people who were in that space that were crazy too. Because the thing is, like, I spent so long trying to convince other people that I wasn't crazy, but now it's like, oh no, I am. But it's like, I don't want to talk to someone that's not. I want to talk to other people that are crazy. And that's when it starts compounding in a big way, because you're like, okay, there are other people like me and they're all like making a ton of money. And so I think it's really like, if you want to be, let's say, a real estate millionaire, are you going to hang out with people that are obsessed with, I don't know, their volleyball rec league? Or are you going to be hanging out with people that are obsessed with making $1 million in real estate? There's nothing wrong with that other group. But if there's something that you want to do, you have to be in a group of people that want that exact same thing. Otherwise, you will be called crazy. You will think you are crazy, and you will always second guess yourself. Whereas in the other world, people are just always like, let's go, and pat you on the butt. They're like, hell yeah, let's go. And like, that's ultimately what you want. You want other people to be crazy. You want to embrace your craziness. Like, that's my whole thing. Are you crazy? We're friends. Like that's kind of what it is for me these days.
Those friends that used to call you crazy, how many of them are you still friends with today?
One. Yeah, like, well, yeah, a couple of them. But like, the one that I'm friends with he is like, man, you're crazy. Like, I wish I could, like, dude, I love that about you. Like, there are people that are like, oh, I love that for you. But then there are people that are like, I love that about you. And I wish I had it in me to be like that. So it's like, there's a fine line, I think. You know what I mean? But yeah, for the most part, I'm not looking to make friends anymore. You know, like, that was the big change in my life when all this happened. Was I wanted friends my whole life. And now I'm like 33. I've got a wife, 2 kids, and then I've got my core set of friends and entrepreneurs. And I'm like, that's it. I'm good. These are I've identified the crazies. Like, I don't need to make 100 friends anymore, because yeah, I just don't have the time to always explain myself to new people.
Oh yeah. I feel like that's the Texas, like, bless your heart,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Exactly. When I meet someone like my neighbors and they're like, what do you do? They don't know that I'm a YouTuber. They don't know that I'm I'll say, oh, I do real estate investments. And if they really like keep clicking in, I'll tell them, but I'm never like, I'm a YouTuber, because then they're going to be like, my neighbor found out because her mom watched my channel. In the next week or two, she came and she's like, so how's your little channel doing? And I was like, it's not little. It's actually the biggest Airbnb YouTube channel, but it's fine. And I was like, you have a little channel. And I'm like, but to her, it's silly. And to me, I'm like, it's an empire, lady. You don't know me.
I know. Dude, I remember when I was leaving one of my companies to do this, they were like, well, just, give us a call back when that little blog doesn't work out. I was like, first of all, it's a newsletter. It's not a blog.
Get your terminology right, bub.
But I do think, I keep going back to that. If somebody doesn't say you're crazy, you're probably not doing anything very interesting. And so I remember sort of thinking them like little notches I could make. Sort of how many people are telling me this is nuts. Why won't this work? I actually thought about it today because I was at that meetup that you were supposed to be at. And I was explaining this new thing that I want to build that I'll tell you about later, super secret. And there were quite a few people that were like, like what? Why do you boring businesses? What is that? Laundromats? and they're like, we're building SpaceX. And I'm like, okay, well, there's more than one way to make money, and we don't all have venture scale businesses. But I kind of like learned at some point to flip my mind, where I started to think, oh no, if everybody agrees with me, I'm too late. It's not that interesting. And if a few people say no, then I'm probably in the right spot. Is there anything that you've done when haters kind of come calling that helps you deal with it? Now you're probably really used to it, but I bet young Rob, you kind of take that to heart. It's hard not to when you first start out.
I wipe my tears with like $100 bills. No, I'm just kidding. It is interesting. I was always made fun of for being the cheap guy, the deal guy, the hustler. I wasn't hustling people. I was just always hustling, right? But as an example, I would camp out of like conference rooms at work that were at noon when they catered food. And I'd be like, if I wasn't there, whoever was like sitting next to that, I'd be like, text me as soon as this meeting lets out, because I'm getting that sandwich. You know what I mean? So they all made fun of me. They really did. I always got made fun of for having new schemes, new deals, new dreams, all that kind of stuff. And coping with it now, I mean, honestly, I think it's just reflecting on like, I am living my dream life. You know what I mean? Like, I want so much more sometimes. And I'm like, dang, man, if I could just go back to like myself just a year ago or like 2 years ago, it's like none of this was imaginable. And then